Hey guys, you are watching your anime world. How are you all? Please support to subscribe this channel for watching new interesting stories. So in this video, we will see what if Deku was betrayed and became the multidimensional hero. Here is short summary. Izuku was preparing for his fight against Tomura Shigaraki when he was suddenly surrounded by his classmates and teacher, Shota Aizawa. He looked at them with confusion when his teacher cancelled out his quirk before Katsuki sent an explosion at him, as they started to fight him without him being capable of using his quirk. Feeling lost and betrayed, Izuku does his best to fight back but can't hold them off long enough to save himself. Momo lands a powerful blow to Izuku's chest, knocking him to the ground, before delivering several more strikes. Why are you doing this? Izuku asked, as the others glared at him. That was for being a traitor to us, they all say, as Izuku watched on in horror. Will he survive his problems? And wait, is that a portal appearing behind him? But before we start, if you want more stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if possible, share this video with your friends. Now let's start the story. Izuku was making his way through the school as he was mentally preparing for the big battle against the villains. He had just been brought back by his friends and they made sure that he was well cared for after his run of being a vigilante. He shook his head at the memories as he walked towards the kitchen in order to get something to eat. He hadn't gotten anything to eat since that night and he was incredibly tired still. He hadn't been capable of sleeping for long out on the road and he was still having nightmares of nearly dying against All for One's attack on the building he and some of the top 10 heroes were inside of. Sitting down at the table, he started to eat his toast that he made when he noticed that some of his classmates were not looking at him. He didn't mind it. Not many of them really talked to him in the first place, so he just continued to eat his breakfast. As soon as he was done, he left the building to go on his normal everyday runs in the morning when he woke up, and as he left the building, he was unaware of the plan being made to stop him from becoming a hero. As he was running around the school grounds, he was soon alone in the middle of the woods away from all cameras in the school, and he sat down on a bench looking at a small pond that he found in the forest near Ua. It was a calming sight to be at since it showed something that the world was not at the moment, peaceful. As he sat there thinking about what led up to this point, he heard a twig snapping behind him and dodged out of the way of an attacker because danger sense had acted up, and once he dodged out of the way he found himself surrounded by all sides by his class. Then, as if something was blocking him from using his quirk had suddenly stopped working. What the? Izuku asked, as he then realized who it was. Aizawa-sensei. What is going on? Izuku asked, looking at those surrounding him with malicious glares. Aizawa walked forwards with a glare as well. Don't fight back, Midoriya. We need to take you in, with or without force. Aizawa said, as he stalked closer to Izuku. In the back of his head, danger sense was flaring big time as Izuku held his head in slight pain as he slowly moved away from his teacher. Can't I trust you? Izuku asked, stuttering, coming back with a vengeance. I knew that this would happen. We will have to stop you before you can hurt any more people, by any means necessary. Aizawa said, as he looked to his class. Go for the kill, he said, as the entire class descended upon him from the shrubbery. Izuku ran through the forest with blood coming down his left arm as he had it impaled by Yaoyorozu's spear, as she was the one who managed to land the first strike on him. It was superficial at best in terms of damage, but he had to dodge every attacker from his class as if they were villains, and he didn't like the thought of it. Why are you doing this? He called out, completely blindsided as well as confused. He had no idea why they were attacking him to kill him. He was just trying to be a hero to everyone, so what was the big deal? You are a danger to all of us. In fact, you are the reason we are in this mess. Katsuki screamed out at Izuku as the young man stared at the boy in confusion. Didn't you apologize to me for everything you did? Izuku called out, as he ran through the forest. He had to escape from the school. It wasn't safe for him anymore. He had to go to his home. Yeah, that would be the safest place for him to go. You're a villain. You conspired with those worthless villains. Ochako called out, as she had tears in her eyes. What are you talking about? I did no such thing. Izuku said, as he kicked Sato in the gut, sending him back a few meters. Well, why did you take the school schedule on Friday during the school week then? You were caught on camera stealing our files and handing them off to villains. Momo called out to him as she stood near him now. Izuku looked around at everyone as he stared on in complete horror as well as complete confusion. What are you talking about? I never did anything of the sort. Izuku said, trying to defend himself. Then what do you call this? Bakugo called out, slamming Izuku into the ground as he pulled out his phone, showing Izuku a video of what was clearly him walking into All Might's office and pulling out some files from the previous week and hiding them in his backpack before being seen again outside of the school giving them to the villain Dabi. Gee, that isn't me. On that day I was outside the place as a vigilante, Izuku said, as he pointed to the date of the video recording. Stop lying, you damn Deku. Tell us the truth already. Bakugo called out when he was yanked off of Izuku by Momo. You won't be trying to trick us with your words, never again. Momo angrily said, as she speared Izuku through his upper chest, just missing his heart and vital veins within it. Coughing up blood, Izuku kicked the girl off of him as he got up, and as soon as he got out of Aizawa's view he ran through the forest as fast as he could. But as he was getting a fair distance away from Aizawa's range, a spear came flying towards him as it pierced through his lower abdomen, causing him to collapse to the ground in massive amounts of pain. Struggling to get up from the ground, he coughed up a massive glob of blood as he pulled the spear out from behind himself and stabbed it into the ground. Coughing wetly, he had moved slightly over towards a random tree as he inspected his wounds, and after looking them over, especially since he coughed up a lot of blood, he deduced that he would be dead soon. He couldn't believe it. The one time he trusted his friends to bring him back safely, he couldn't believe that they'd betray him like this, all because of a stupid video that they couldn't care to look at the date of. As he continued to walk towards a massive clearing, he found that it was almost peaceful as he managed to get to the middle of it as he collapsed to the ground in massive amounts of pain. The fear of death was coming in hot as his breathing had come in treasure droves as he started to hyperventilate. With his mental strength lowering just enough to the point that he couldn't think straight, he had tried to get up with his 4-hole-filled body. As soon as he picked himself up, he looked over at the clearing and found that his class was coming out of it and glaring hard as he finally stood up. He got into a sloppy fighting stance, his face and body all pale from the loss of blood. Truly this was the most traumatizing part of his life. The friends that he worked so hard to make, the ones who never cared that he used to be quirkless before gaining the quirk one for all, he just couldn't handle everything that was coming to him. Any last words, Deku? Katsuki asked, as he led the pack. Why yeah, I never should have tried to save you. That goes for all of you, I shouldn't have opened my heart to anyone. I knew that something like this would happen. But I did it anyway. Why is this world just so against me having a happy life? What did I do in order to get called a liar when it is literally impossible for me to lie? All I ever wanted in my life was to become a hero. All I ever wanted other than being a hero was to have the feeling of being loved for who I am, Izuku screamed out before being impaled in the left portion of his chest. Looking down slowly, he found a massive spear in his body as it had gone through his body, and as he looked up, he found Uraraka was the one to throw it. And giving the most heartbroken look he could ever give and his eyes becoming dull, he stumbled backwards a bit as, unknown to everyone around him, a portal appeared behind him on the ground. A villain was watching the whole event from afar, and they couldn't believe this. Heroes turning against the one who was the most heroic of them all, so he decided to do something heroic for the boy. Get him out of this dimension and into one where he can trust others more than he could hear, and possibly get some love that he deserved. He had seen how the boy grew up from day one. He watched as everyone had abused him, mentally scarred him, and lastly but certainly not least, betrayed him at every turn. That villain's name was Kurogiri, and he had done one last thing from the goodness of his heart, that was from Oboro Shirakumo, as the young hero in training had stared at the scene before himself. Maybe it was right to allow them to keep me as Kurogiri, he thought to himself as he watched as the boy fall into his portal. At least I can live with the fact that I saved that boy's life, Oboro said, as Kurogiri gained full control of the body. Was that a good idea? Oboro. The Nomu asked, as Oboro sent out a thought. Safe. I see. Well, I certainly hope that boy is safe. After being betrayed by his class, he will certainly need some therapy for this kind of treatment. To think that heroes would turn on one another over some video that was manufactured by the MLA. Kurogiri said, as he disappeared back into the hospital he was held at. He had used all his energy in order to send Izuku away from this world, and he would be damned if he allowed the son of his ultimate master be killed by those he aspired to become. Stay safe, Izuku Shigaraki. Izuku was falling backwards, and as soon as he landed on his back, he felt himself sink further into the ground as he entered a portal that was eerily similar to Kurogiri's portals. Killed by a villain in the end. At least I don't have to be fearful of others anymore, Izuku said, as he lost consciousness inside the portal. As Izuku's unconscious form had been falling through a portal, another battle was underway as a man in an orange GI was fighting a large purple cat with weird clothing. Somehow, you had absorbed the power of the Super Saiyan God into your Super Saiyan form. Truly impressive, well done. But I guess it's time to destroy Earth, the cat man said, as he charged a massive supernova attack. The man in the orange GI had looked panicked as he charged an attack himself so that he could push it back when both fighters noticed a massive portal appearing near them as it spat something out towards the Earth. What in the world? The orange GI wearing man asked, as he sensed the energy of the new arrival. I wonder what happened to him. The cat man asked, before looking at his opponent. Well, I guess I can continue. What will you do, Goku? Will you save that new arrival from going splat on the Earth's surface, or will you stop my attack from destroying your world? The cat god asked, as he threw the attack. The now named Goku had looked back and forth between the body of the boy who arrived in between their fight, and the attack coming towards the Earth. Goku went towards the attack coming towards the Earth as he called his son who was back on the Earth telepathically. Gohan, can you hear me? Goku called out, as his son answered the call. What is it, Dad? What happened? Did you defeat Beerus? His son asked. Not yet. I have to hold back an attack that could destroy the Earth. But there is a boy entering the Earth's atmosphere at the moment. You need to save him from hitting the ground hard enough to kill him. He's already injured. If he hits the ground now, he will die for sure. His energy is already dipping lower at this very moment. Save his life. Goku called out as he pushed the massive ball of power with all his strength. You got it, Dad. Just tell me where he will land. Gohan called back. I don't know. Just look for a boy with green and black hair and wearing a weird costume that resembles a hero. Goku called out telepathically. As Goku was holding back a massive ball of energy, the body of the boy who came through the portal in space had been entering the lowest part of the atmosphere. As soon as Gohan had seen the boy's body, he flew as fast as he could in order to save the boy from danger, and as soon as he caught him, he found the boy shivering from the cold as well as incredibly injured, having been impaled multiple times. Flying back towards the ship, he lands near Krillin as he runs over to the short man in a panic. Krillin, do you have some senzu beans on hand? Gohan asked, as he placed the boy on the ground. I always have some on hand. Here you go, Gohan. Krillin said, as Gohan placed the bean in the boy's mouth. Don't worry, young man, it's a senzu bean. It will heal your wounds and restore your stamina. Gohan said, as he heard the boy groan softly before a chewing sound was heard. As soon as the chewing sound was cleared up by a gulping sound, the boy completely lost consciousness as the group looked over him. Who is the boy, Gohan? A giant green man asked, as Gohan looked over at him. I don't know, Piccolo. But from what I can sense from his energy, he seems to have 8 other people's energies inside him. Gohan said, as he sensed the power of the individual. Compared to all of us, how strong would he be at full power? Krillin asked, as he walked over, placing a couple fingers on the jugular vein. He should be as strong as you, Krillin, but in terms of powers, he seems to have it in spades. With enough training he could become strong enough to challenge Gohan in terms of power alone. Tien said, as he walked up from behind the group. Are you sure about that? Krillin asked, concerned. Don't worry about if he is evil, he doesn't have a speck of evil within his body. It would be hard to see him hurt a fly with how soft his heart is as well as his minuscule aura. Tien said, as he placed a hand over the boy's chest. It seems like he has been impaled by a spear multiple times over, but from who it was from I don't know. Tien concluded as he finished reading the memories of the boy's body. Piccolo moved forward as he placed a hand over the boy's head as he started to read the memories of the young boy on the ground softly breathing. It seems that he comes from a different dimension. I don't know which one, but it seems like this one has people similar to humans of our world, but they have superpowers for everyone except a select few of humans. Piccolo said, as he moved his hand from the boy's head as he looked over at Gohan. What do you need me to do, Piccolo? Gohan asked, as they saw a massive explosion in the sky. I'm sure that was Goku either losing or gaining the trust of Beerus, but other than that problem, you should best take him to your home with Videl. You will be the best one to keep him safe, Piccolo said, as Gohan nodded his head. It wasn't much longer before Beerus and an unconscious Goku appeared in front of them as the cat god had stared at them with a mirth in his eyes as he stared at them impassively. Goku has lost the battle against me. I was surprised that he forced me to use at least 18% of my full power. He really is a genius fighter when it comes to martial arts, but I guess since he was defeated, I can finally destroy Earth. Beerus said, as he placed his hand towards the Z fighters as they stood in front of the unconscious Izuku as he for some reason began to stand up. Unknown to everyone, Izuku was undergoing a metamorphosis as a small black and green tail sprouted from his body in order to make sure he could survive an attack of similar variety. Within the realm of one for all, the previous wielders of the power were watching everything happen outside of Izuku's body with his now amethyst-colored eyes. They saw a tall cat man using a powerful aura in order to try and kill the group as they used Black Whip in order to attempt to stop the god from doing anything. They had no clue how strong this person was, but they wouldn't allow him to destroy the earth. As soon as everyone surrounding them looked over at the body of Izuku, they saw that a black tendril was holding the god's arm as the said god was staring at the mysterious tendril. He yanked on it slightly as Izuku's body was pulled slightly from where he was, and as soon as the god moved closer to the boy, he saw the amethyst-colored eyes as he smirked at the boy. Well, if you want to take over the boy's body, I will make sure that you all are pulled from his mindscape, Beerus said, as he grabbed the boy's face as it was still impassive. As soon as he released a pulse of energy, everyone surrounding the god watched as multiple people appeared out from the boy's previously unconscious body. A man with a sickly form appeared with green eyes as well as white hair as he looked around the area confused as more people started to appear next to him in the same kind of confusion on their face. As soon as everyone was brought out of the boy's body, all that remained was a golden aura surrounding Izuku's body as Izuku's eyes were now a dark blue as it seemed like someone was left to take control of Izuku's body for him. I couldn't bring the last one out. It could be that he hadn't fully formed in there. No matter. Now who are you and why did you take over the boy's body? The god asked, as the white-haired man moved forward. My name is Yoichi Shigaraki. And I am first for the boy's power he uses. We were attempting to use his body in order to prevent you from destroying the planet, Yoichi said, as everyone looked at him confused. What is this power you gave to him? Gohan asked, as Yoichi looked over at him. Is there someone called All for One in this world? Yoichi asked, as none of the people had known who he was talking about. Who is this All for One guy? Piccolo asked, as Yoichi gave them a crude description of the man. So this All for One is a man who can take and steal powers and give them to others. I can see why he became a villain, Whis said, as he walked forwards. As much as we would love to thank you, our host before you took us out of him was only trying to prevent the planet's destruction. Another man said, as he had orange-colored hair and a scar across his nose. Do you wish to be placed back in that boy's head again? Whis asked, as the group nodded except for one. Could I stay outside the boy's head? The woman of the group asked, as Yoichi nodded his head, as Whis used his power to place the group except for the woman inside Izuku's quirk. Now then, who are you and why don't you wish to return back to the realm you came from the boy? Piccolo asked, as he walked over to the woman. My name is Nana Shimura. And you wanted to know about the power the boy uses, correct? Nana asked, as everyone nodded. It is a power that had been passed down from user to user. In the world we came from there was a disease that had come about that caused people to gain superpowers from that of comic books. Ranging from telekinesis all the way to fire breathing, that was for the boy's father by the way. But there was a man who stood against all for one who had a strong sense of justice and fought him. But he ultimately failed, and once he was given a stockpiling power, the power joined with the power he had of passing it down via DNA. It was passed down in the sole purpose of defeating all for one, but since the newest user of the quirk as the younger generation call it, he has been capable of using the powers of the previous users. And he had managed to gain control of all the previous wielders' powers when he was betrayed by everyone he knew and loved. I don't want him to deal with his mental anguish alone, I want to be there as a surrogate mother figure for him since his mother didn't come with us. Nana said, as everyone looked at her and thought about her explanation. So, what is the name of the power the boy uses? Vegeta asked, now entering the conversation. The power he uses is called One for All. It is a power stockpiling quirk that has the added ability to be passed on to the next generation. It has been around since the dawn of quirks and has been passed down at least 8 times before the current user came about. Nana said, as the group thought about it. How much of the power could he use if it was passed down 8 times? Gohan asked, as Goku just now woke up. With all the conversations happening, Beerus had actually fallen asleep and was taken away without anyone really knowing. Before being killed by who he thought were his friends, he was only capable of using only 45% of the power without hurting himself. And he is only 15 years old, Nana said, as the group looked at her astonished. Only 45%, why that? Is it like too powerful for him to wield at 100%? Piccolo asked, concerned. Whenever he uses the power at maximum output he will break his bones, and he has already been placed in the hospital multiple times for breaking them. Enough that if he breaks the arms, he has again, they will become incapable of being used. Nana said, as she held the boy's unconscious form in her lap. Well, it seems like we will need to help him attain his full potential. Piccolo said, cracking his neck. Well, as much as I would love to allow that to happen, Izuku will need to get enough therapy in order to pass over the trauma he has endured in less than 15 minutes in his old world. Nana said, as she stopped the thought of training. What do you mean by that? Gohan asked, now completely worried. Before Izuku got One for All, he was a part of the quirkless population of children who were raised during the high point of quirks. He never talked about it when he was in the school for heroes UA, but that was because he placed his feelings on the matter on the back burner. Nana said, as Piccolo leaned down near the boy. He had to deal with bullies as well as abuse from his peers, didn't he? Piccolo asked, as he rubbed the boy's head. He did. What makes matters worse is the fact that the school he was going to, UA Academy, had allowed his main abuser to be in the same class as him. When his previous wielders of the quirk had seen his previous memories, we had seen the extent of the damage to his mind. It had made him extremely skittish of others, not to mention not trusting of authority figures. He was already scared enough to tell Toshi about his past, about how he was suicide baited by the main abuser. Nana said, as everyone was taken aback. He went through all that without even once losing his goal of becoming a hero. Krillin asked, as Nana nodded. He worked so hard to increase his own confidence, as well as strength in order to wield the power of One for All. But as soon as he was placed in his class at UA with his main abuser, it was moved to being similar to middle school for him as soon as class started. I just want to help him regain the life in his eyes to when they were before he had been betrayed by those he loved and cared for. Nana said, as she pulled the boy into her chest. As the group had nodded their heads, Gohan moved forwards as he asked her a question that would change the future of the woman and boy's life forever. Would you like to move in with me in Vital? We are going to be having a child soon. And it would be nice to have our child have an older brother figure in her life. Gohan asked, as Nana sat there looking at him as she started to tear up slightly. You know, if you weren't married, I would beat you right now. Nana said, as everyone laughed. I take that as a yes. Gohan asked, as that was when Izuku woke up. URGHN. What happened? Izuku asked, as he opened his eyes, revealing to everyone that even his eyes were the shade of green more akin to emeralds. As soon as Izuku looked at everyone as well as Nana sitting behind himself, his face became more akin to that of a tomato, as there was seemingly one thing left for him to do. He passed out again. Within the world of One for All, Izuku was sitting in front of the previous wielders of the quirk as the golden vestige had suddenly come into being. "Young Midoriya, are you all right?" All Might came running towards the young man. All Might?" Izuku asked, with a broken expression. "What happened to the young man I helped raise?" All Might asked, as Izuku looked at him with hurt eyes. My friends, my comrades, they all thought that I was working for the villains. They killed me for it," Izuku said, as he tried to understand why they did it. "Oh, I can see what happened. I knew that I shouldn't have let that video get out. Damn it," All Might said, as he angrily slammed his fist down on the table. He was in his prime form now, as he was taller than most of the others within the vestige world, as the color in his sclera had returned to its original white. "What do you mean video?" Izuku asked, as All Might gained a guilty look. "I had shown that video to Nezu and told him that I think that the villains were trying to isolate you from your peers. And he stated that he would take care of it without my assistance. Look where that got you. Did you manage to pass on the quirk to someone else?" All Might asked, as Izuku looked at him confused. "What are you talking about? I thought a villain had killed me, but at the same time, I feel like I'm still alive outside of this place," Izuku said, as he felt his arms move about the vestige world. "Then it is a miracle that you're still alive, young Midoriya. I can only hope and dream that you can live your life to the best of your ability, and hopefully find someone in order to live out the rest of your days with," All Might said, as Izuku nodded. "Now that you're here, can you tell me what happened, Yoichi-san?" Izuku asked, as the man nodded and explained the situation. After going through an exposition dump for about a few minutes, Izuku and All Might noticed two things. One was that Izuku was extremely lucky that there was a few good people who were looking after him whilst his body rested. The second part was that Nana wasn't mentioned at all during the events that happened, and they were both curious as to what happened. "Hey Yoichi, where is Nana?" Izuku asked, as Yoichi walked towards the boy. "Find out when you wake up, ninth," the man said, as he bopped the boy's nose. Waking up on a couch, Izuku found himself in a dark room, and as he looked over at the wall, he saw a clock stating that it was 3 in the morning. Getting up from the couch, he noticed that there was something off about this place as well as where he was, and as he moved around, the light suddenly turned on as a young man with black hair in small spikes looked at him concerned. "Hey young man, I know that you might not trust me or whatever, but you should probably sit back down. You were incredibly injured and I'm not taking any chances that the Senzu bean didn't heal you all the way," the young man said, as Izuku listened to him whilst keeping the man in his vision. As soon as he was sat down on the couch, another person entered the room as she noticed his presence and ran over to him. "Ninth, you're all right. I thought that you weren't going to make it," Nana said, as she hugged the boy into her chest. Tears were coming out of his eyes as Izuku recognized Nana's voice as he leaned into her body, as his body shivered as well as trembled as he started to sob uncontrollably. She pulled him down back to the couch as they looked at the young man across from them, looking at them with a small smile. "Well, it seems like you met Nana Shimura, and from your reaction to her, you seem to be really close," the young man said, as Izuku nodded. She was the previous wielder of One for All. She was my mentor's mentor. Not only that, but she reminds me so much about my own mom, that I sometimes called her mom when I was looking for All for One," Izuku said, as the young man nodded his head. "Well, welcome to Earth, or well, my Earth. The year is 778 and we are glad that you are okay. You had multiple S from what seemed to be a spear. Can you tell me what happened so that I can get a full understanding of your situation?" the man asked, as Izuku nodded. Explaining what had happened in order to get to this situation, Izuku had told the young man about his old world, one where quirks were superpowers, and that he had a hobby of collecting information about them. Then about the escapades that he and his class endured against the League of Villains and what they had to go through to bring him back from being all alone out on the road by himself searching for a 2-century-long old villain. Then he told him about what his mentor told him within the Vestige realm and about what had happened afterwards of Nezu informing the faculty about the video. And as soon as Izuku ended the information dump, the young man in front of him had enough to fill out a whole biography about Izuku himself. You're telling me that they didn't believe that the video was taken whilst you were out looking for the supervillain and never questioned it? The young man asked, as Izuku nodded and stated that he made a similar statement. And how did they take it? The young man asked, as Izuku shook his head. They didn't believe me. They said that it could have been altered in order to make them think that I didn't do it. Izuku said, as the young man in front of him groaned in exasperation. Well, you don't need to fear us people on Earth. Those of us with powers are either extremely strong humans, or aliens from another planet who interbred with humans. But don't worry, we're good guys. I swear, the young man said, as Izuku nodded, itching to get a notebook out to write about his abilities. Wait, I never asked you before, but what is your name? Izuku asked, as the young man smiled at him. Well, far be it from me to tell you. My name is Son Gohan, and I am one of the strongest people on the planet. Gohan said, smiling at Izuku. Is there a way for you to train me when I am fully better? Izuku asked, as Gohan looked at his schedule and nodded. I don't see why not, but I would be mainly looking over your mental training. We can't have you losing your sense of self as well as your mind when you are fighting someone who is evil. Also, before I forget, we don't place certain villains from this universe in jail, we go for the kill. Gohan said, before leaving the room bidding a good night. As Izuku watched as the young man walked away and told him about having to kill certain villains, he looked over at Nana as she nodded her head and told him about each of their kill counts. It was truly a terrifying thing that he had to know about if he was living in the same house as a killer, who only fought to kill when his family was involved. Shaking his head from those thoughts, Izuku looked over at Nana as she stared down at him with a loving smile. Should we go to bed now? Izuku asked, as Nana nodded her head and turned off the light. Lying next to the boy and pulling him into her body, Izuku relaxed into her embrace as she rubbed his head with her hand. I will make sure that you get all the love you get until you meet someone you can give your love to, Izuku. Mark my words, you will become strong enough to protect both yourself and others. Nana said, as they both fell asleep. Waking up later on that morning, they had a smell waft into their noses as Izuku slowly climbed out of Nana's grip as he sat up on the couch with serious bedhead. What is going on? Who's cooking? Izuku thoughtlessly asked, before walking towards the kitchen. As soon as he entered the kitchen, he found a young woman who was about 3 months pregnant cooking at a stove as he sat down next to Gohan as the young man gave him a smile. Morning, bud, how was your sleep? Gohan asked, as Izuku gave him a thumbs up. Wow, your wife must be some cook if it smells that good from the living room. Nana said, as Gohan laughed. Don't worry, that is just breakfast. You all can get yourselves prepared for later. I will make sure you know everything about our world within the next couple of days. I will go as slow as possible as needed in order to make sure that the information sticks to you both. Gohan said, as he ate an apple. The morning would continue on without much fanfare, and as soon as the group of 3 had entered the room, Gohan sat at his desk as he talked about what they would be going over. Needless to say, that by the end of the session of learning, Nana was basically a zombie from the amount of information, and Izuku plus Gohan were nerding out about their respective worlds. On a mountain in the distance, Piccolo could be seen watching over the event with a smirk on his face as the 2 nerds were having fun with lessons about each other's worlds. They were information hoarders, and they were master strategists in the making. If only Gohan could continue his training in order to keep himself ahead of most villains that might come searching for a fight. But time would pass as Izuku would soon slowly but surely stop having nightmares about what happened in his old world, but replacing everyone with the Dragon Ball cast as the ones to finally do him in. After some of the worst nightmares, the boy had avoided some of the specifically aggressive ones such as Goku and Vegeta for a while, since the boy was severely terrified of them both. But Izuku had managed to meet Piccolo and trained under him as he showed off his control over One for All, to the point that Piccolo had to give him a compliment for managing to control at least 48% of the power during his mental training with Gohan. Before I forget, Izuku was assisted with his schoolwork by Gohan as the young man was already a massive scholar and helped Izuku get his master's degree in teaching surprisingly in normal schooling. It was now time for Izuku's first day of training physically in order to keep his power under check as well as control and get him to increase his knowledge of ki control. The young man had placed the basics of ki control and combined it with his quirk terrifyingly quick and was quickly able to increase in strength pretty quickly. Piccolo also noticed the tail growing out of Izuku's lower abdomen as the young man didn't know what it was for and guessed that One for All analyzed some of the Saiyans nearby and adjusted his body to become stronger like them in order to preserve him longer. To hear that a quirk had a mind of its own was terrifying, that it would adjust the user's body in order to survive more events that were similar in nature as well as how they nearly died before. Piccolo could be seen giving Izuku pointers on the demon school of fighting martial arts, and they were sparring as Piccolo wasn't going at full power. If he did, he would be far outclassing the boy in terms of power alone. In technique he was outclassed as well since the boy could only use the quirks in small combinations, and he had also finally managed to unlock the full extent of the power of the second user's quirk gear shift. He thought of it like a standard car's shifting gears as he switched gears often during spars, and as they trained hard, they noticed a powerful energy closing in on the planet. Do you think that you could assist us in fighting this villain? He is extremely more powerful than I last remember he was, Piccolo asked, as Izuku powered up to his maximum. He still couldn't use his full power of One for All, but he could feel like if he continued to control ki and combine it with his power of One for All he could master the quirk within about a few more months of training. He and Piccolo had flown over to where the massive power and its ship was landing, and they landed near the edge of the ship as hundreds, if not thousands of soldiers had exited the ship. Izuku had learned from Piccolo that when it came to certain villains, they wouldn't take kindly to him sparing them and try to do a cheap shot on him when his guard is lowered. So Izuku had it beaten into him to never lose his guard against certain opponents, and he decided to stick closer to the giant green man in order to keep close to his new mentor figure. Once the massive power came out of the ship, it was revealed to be a small individual who had horns on his head poking out in two different directions. Ho ho ho, I can't believe that after a few dozen years that this is what the world had fallen to. Where is Goku? I have come here to have my revenge against the monkey. The alien said, as he looked at the group. Remember your training, Midoriya, make sure that you never lower your guard. Piccolo said, powering up. Izuku powered up next to him as Gohan was looking at the boy as if he was a completely different person than the last time he saw him a few months prior. Wow, you got stronger than last time, didn't you? Gohan asked, as Izuku nodded his head. He's been keeping up with his training, unlike someone. Piccolo griped as Gohan told him about the job he'd taken. Once the alien had enough of the people around ignoring him, he sent out his forces to attack, causing those of the group to split up and led multiple legions of the army in different areas of the island as Izuku pulled the group into his small barrier that he created. You're stuck here with us now, Squirt. One of the soldiers called out, pointing his blaster at Izuku. Izuku sensed the man's energy, and Izuku found that his power was already higher than that of the soldier, much more than all of the soldiers in the area as he smirked. Releasing smokescreen into the barrier, he covered the entire area inside of the barrier and made it impossible to track him as he flew around and attacked and killed each and every soldier within. As soon as the barrier was released, Izuku landed near an old man who had buffed up and destroyed a group of soldiers as he wiped his brow. Well, if that is all you ruffians can do to me, then I hate to see what your boss can do. The old man scoffed as the group attacked. He was about to attack when a few black tendrils appeared out of nowhere and smacked into each of the fighters as Izuku came flying in and kicking each and every soldier with maximum power in order to prevent them from coming back into the fight. Well, if you aren't scrappy young man, what's your name? The old man asked, as Izuku landed near him. My name is Midoriya Izuku, and are you okay? I didn't think that they'd hit you that hard since you are seemingly old to be a fighter. But then again, my mentor before coming here was quite old himself and was a hero longer than most others. Izuku mumbled out the last part, as the old man laughed. Hee hee. Don't worry about little old me, I can handle myself. Let's take care of the remaining forces. The old man said, as Izuku smiled at him before smirking at the soldiers. Both went towards the soldiers as they used martial arts as well as power in order to utterly annihilate the entire group in front of them as the rest of the Z fighters returned after their fights. As soon as the rest of the Z fighters returned to the original area where the rest of the other fighters remained, Piccolo looked at Izuku with pride. "You're still alive, that's all well and good," Piccolo praised as he looked over at a slightly winded Gohan. "You will be getting back into training when this whole event is over," Piccolo informed as Gohan nodded his head in resolution. As they looked at the massive ship as well as the person in charge of the army as well as the subordinates, Izuku saw a small purple-looking man as he glared at everyone. "Mr. Piccolo, I think that guy will be more trouble than the others. But I personally think that it would belong to the guy in the small hovercraft," Izuku said, as Gohan gawked at him. "Wow, you really are a genius when it comes to strategy. I knew that it was right to mentally train you," Gohan said, as a voice spoke out. "Don't worry, Lord Frieza, I will make sure that these bastards fall to your feet," a tall purple-looking alien said, as he stared at the group. As he entered a battle stance, Piccolo had moved forward in order to fight the alien, and they clashed in the air as Izuku watched from where he was with a slight issue. "Why are they moving so slow?" Izuku asked, suddenly, as Gohan and some of the others looked at him like he was crazy. "What are you talking about? They're moving at speeds that make Super Saiyan 3 seem like nothing," Krillin said, as Izuku looked at them confused. "Well, it seems like Mr. Piccolo is on the defensive, and he is losing the battle," Izuku said, as they all were worried. As soon as Piccolo landed on the ground, he took off his gear as he cracked his neck, and he stared at the group before smirking towards the soldier. "Well, I guess I will give up my chance to defeat you. It looks like my protege wants to give it a shot against you," Piccolo said, chuckling evilly. Moving over back to the others, Izuku watched as Piccolo looked at him alone and pointed at the soldier. "Get him, my apprentice, and make him enter a world of pain from your few months of training. I will not expect you to win, but I will not expect you to lose," Piccolo said, as he landed and entered a meditating stance. Izuku entered the arena as the soldier immediately underestimated him from the get-go as he glared hard at him. "What? You end our fight because you wanted to send a literal child against me? Despicable," the soldier said, as Izuku smirked as he seemingly disappeared from sight and appeared behind him. Frieza had noticed the speed of which was similar to him going full power in his final form and had to hand it to the human for being capable of reaching that kind of speed in milliseconds. Izuku then kicked the soldier up in the air as he followed up with a sledgehammer crusher as he slammed both of his fists into the soldier's gut, sending him to the ground, but before he could hit the ground, Black Whip had appeared and grabbed him, giving the soldier a serious case of whiplash. And as soon as he was pulled back up, Izuku used gear shift in order to increase the speed of which the soldier would go when his punch landed against his chest and right where his heart would be located. As soon as the punch landed, the soldier had coughed up a crud ton of blood as he was sent flying into a rock face as he was dug deep into it. Landing on the ground, he looked at the massive crack in the earth as he waited for the soldier to come back out, knowing that he wasn't finished. As the soldier had blown apart the rocks as well as debris, he flew towards Izuku as fast as he could in order to take him by surprise as Izuku used gear shift on himself to increase his perception of time in order to attack the soldier before he could arrive. As soon as he saw the soldier coming in for a stop towards him, Izuku moved forwards faster than everyone except Frieza could register and placed his fist right where it would be impaled into the villain's chest and right through his heart. Izuku didn't like to kill, but this soldier was a threat to Piccolo, and if he didn't take him out now, he wouldn't be able to protect anyone. His thought process was, if this villain isn't killed now, then he might come back if spared with more people looking to cause chaos. And as soon as the soldier had appeared in front of Izuku, Izuku had released his hold-on gear shift, and everyone watched as Izuku's whole arm was going through the villain's chest as he coughed up massive amounts of blood as he smirked at the soldier. "Sorry, sir, but your time in life has expired," Izuku said, as the man was pulled off of his arm as he fell backwards as Izuku pointed his arm out towards the downed soldier and he charged an attack that was emerald in color. "Emerald Bullet," Izuku yelled as the last had finally charged fully and blasted the remains of the soldier completely. As Frieza looked down at the boy with curiosity, he saw that he would be a problem if left alone to his own devices if he is fighting his own men. Izuku jumped out of the way of a death beam from Frieza as the alien had landed near the boy as he stared at the alien with trepidation. Well, it seems like you have earned your right to be called the Namekian's protege, but let it be known that even if he couldn't defeat this soldier, then that means that he couldn't defeat me. What do you think your chances are? Frieza asked, as he cracked his neck. I won't win, but I would at least make sure that you are held off until Goku and Vegeta arrive in time to take you down. Izuku said, getting into his own fighting stance. Transforming into his final form, Izuku sensed the massive increase in power, and he knew that it was massively more powerful than him by a wide margin. But Frieza didn't know about gear shift, he only saw that Izuku was fast enough to be harder to perceive than most people. And once he gave Izuku the come-on gesture, the boy and alien flew off into the sky as they clashed in the air. Kick and punch were countered with ki blasts as well as techniques and death beams in the air as Izuku used his entire repertoire in order to hold off the Emperor of the Universe. He was still fighting when Goku and Vegeta had finally arrived on Earth to find Izuku fighting Frieza in his final form as both warriors gave him praise, worthy of being a warrior to the others. As soon as Frieza had enough of Izuku's shenanigans, he went to a higher percentage of his power in order to go faster than the boy could perceive even with gear shift active and slammed him down into the earth. As he skidded towards Goku and Vegeta, he groaned in pain as he struggled to get up from his position as Goku had helped him up from the ground. Hey, you did great out there, but leave this fight to me and Vegeta, okay? The man asked, as Izuku nodded his head. Well, Krillin, get over here. Get Izuku a Senzu bean so that he could recover. Goku said, as Krillin moved closer with a Senzu. Here you go, little guy, you did great out there against Frieza, even if he was holding back on you by a lot. Krillin praised, as Izuku nodded. After eating the bean, Izuku stood up and walked over near Piccolo and Gohan as he stood in between them both as they thought about the next move. Will this mean that I will be learning some moves from Gohan? Izuku asked, as Piccolo looked at him. Yes, you will be learning some moves that the boy had learned when he was younger than you were. Be prepared for it, because it will be some of the harshest training you've ever had. Piccolo said, as they all continued to watch the battle between Goku and Frieza in what would be their base forms. As Goku was fighting final form Frieza in the air, the Z fighters were conversing about who was going to win when Vegeta sensed Izuku's power and moved closer to him. What did you do in order to become as strong as Gohan, if not even stronger? Vegeta asked, as Izuku looked at him in confusion. I just used my quirk and combined it with ki control, that was what Mr. Piccolo has been drilling into my head as of late. Izuku said, as someone else arrived on the island. It was Nana, as she looked extremely worried, as she moved closer to Izuku as she fretted over him. Are you all right, Izuku? I noticed your energy drop under the threshold that I told you that I'd come to check on you for. Nana said, as Izuku chuckled softly. Don't worry, Nana, I'm fine. We're just watching Goku fight Frieza, and it seems like he's having some slight issues against him. Izuku said, as everyone noticed that now that Frieza was now golden and Goku had his blue form, they were either evenly matched or were having issues keeping up with the other. More so from Goku than it was from Frieza. As the fight continued on, Goku had finally managed to have Frieza on the ground as he spoke about the Emperor's weakness with his new form, his inability to keep his form up whilst he was running out of power to hold it. But just as he was about to continue on, he was blasted through the chest by a blaster bolt, and he fell to the ground as Frieza moved up to him and started to kick him in the injury. Vegeta-san, you have that blue form as well, right? Izuku asked, concerned. Yes. What about it? He asked, looking at the boy. Shouldn't you help him? He's going to be killed at this rate. Izuku said, as Vegeta gained a smirk. Don't worry about Kakarot, he's taken more damage than that before. But I guess it is my turn to fight Frieza. The prince said, as he floated down to Frieza. Ah, Vegeta, it's been a long time since I saw you last. Are you thinking about working for me again? Now that you see what the pecking order is, you finally wish to serve me again? Frieza asked, as Vegeta smirked at him. No, because just like Kakarot I have attained that form as well. Ha, hiya, Vegeta screamed out, as he powered up into his own blue form. What is this form? Frieza called out, concerned as well as fearful. It could be stated that after Vegeta had shown this new form to Frieza, the match was a wrap, and after the tyrant had tried to blow up the planet, time was rewound in order to fix their mistakes of leaving him alive. So after Goku had decided to eat the proverbial bullet and kill Frieza immediately, since Vegeta wanted to soak in the win over Frieza, they were kind of aggressive in their own training. Izuku had been staying on Earth in order to gain as much power as possible in order to defend others as well as keep himself at maximum power. He then overheard that Goku and Vegeta had left the planet once again in order to train with Beerus in order to get a hold on their new forms that would be power-consuming forms. Shrugging his shoulders, he kept up his training in order to make sure that he could increase his ability to control One for All to the maximum power output. And so, another couple more months had passed and Izuku had finally managed to gain a full power usage of One for All without breaking any of his limbs and causing any problems with the others. In terms of power, he was already approaching Piccolo in terms of power control as well as mastery. All in all, Izuku was slowly becoming as strong as some of the more powerful fighters within the Earth and Universe 7. Although in terms of his newfound Saiyan biology, Izuku hadn't been capable of transforming into a Super Saiyan to further increase his power output. Not only that, but he was more scared about what Vegeta would say about him if he revealed that kind of information to the Prince of Saiyans. Piccolo had stated that he would tell Vegeta about it in order to see what he thinks about a boy without a Saiyan parent being one of their races, but hadn't heard back from it. It wasn't until a few days after Piccolo stated that, said Vegeta had arrived on his doorstep with a serious look on his face. "So you've gained the bloodwork of my race. Can you tell me more about what happened so I can be caught up on how that happened in the first place?" Vegeta asked, as he sat down on the couch whilst Izuku sat on the ground in front of him. Explaining the events again to the prince, and he wasn't even happy about how Izuku gained the biology of the Saiyans from his quirk, taking in information about those around him in order to prevent his near-death experience as a human from happening again. "Well, if you wish to become a Super Saiyan, then you will need to find something that will piss you off to the point of which you will want to destroy it immediately. In order to transform, you need to suffer from the pain of loss. Only then can you transform into a Super Saiyan, and once you do that, I will help you personally in order to gain more powerful forms so that you can be useful in the future," Vegeta said, as he pulled Izuku outside. As they were in an area where there was nobody around, no cities as well as innocent lives nearby, Vegeta had Izuku powering up in order to see if he could do it without the pain of loss. Izuku's green aura was glowing brighter as he powered up as he tried to transform, and he was thinking about everything that happened to him. But each and every time he thought about the bullying of him when he was quirkless, the suicide baiting, and many others, he just couldn't transform based on that kind of pain. "Well, it seems like this will be harder for you than I initially thought. How about this? Think about every single person you liked or loved and cared about, and watching them die because of that, all for one character from your original world. And that you couldn't do anything to stop it from happening," Vegeta said, as Izuku nodded and started to power up. Thinking about those he cared about before he was betrayed by them, he started thinking about how they were before the betrayal and how they would be killed since he wasn't there to protect them anymore. Then the last person who came to his mind arrived as she was held up by All for One as he glared at Izuku in the nightmare as he grinned at him before taking his mother's quirk as well as taking her head and swiping it away from its body. It was here that Izuku felt something snap inside of him as his power started to build up even more outside, and Vegeta was impressed with the power output as well as the damage caused from such a transformation. "Grrrah!" Izuku screamed as his curly hair spiked up as he stood before Vegeta in his own super form. His muscles appeared to be much more pronounced than they were before, and his hair was similar to the Super Saiyans but much curlier in appearance. He had some lightning sparks coming around him as the power seemingly merged with his quirk as he glowed and almost lime green in color. "Congratulations on becoming the first ever human who had evolved to take on my race's genetics from a mere glance and enter the Super Saiyan form with only memories that were fabricated. Now all you need to do is master this transformation before you can even move on to the next transformations. I will be waiting at Capsule Corporation in order to train you to the second transformation of a Saiyans. I expect you to be here within the next few days. Have Piccolo take you to the lookout in order to train inside the time chamber," Vegeta said, as Izuku nodded his head and flew off. As he was walking away from the location, Vegeta had noticed a familiar energy entering West City and he flew over there. So Vegeta had managed to get you to transform into a Super Saiyan. That was mighty kind of him to do, but now that you have this form, he wishes for you to master it, is that correct? Piccolo asked, as Izuku nodded his head before turning off the lime transformation. Alright, tell Gohan that I will be taking both of you into the time chamber in order to get you all into fighting shape. I will be at the lookout in order to get the place set up for us, you will be training for 2 whole years in there with us. So make it snappy, Piccolo said, as Izuku flew off. Piccolo flew over to the lookout, which was surprisingly not that far from where he and Izuku were talking at, and he landed on the topmost portion of the place. Landing near Dend, he saw the smaller Namekian looking over the earth as he had a smile. Dend, I take it you know what I'm here for? Piccolo asked, as the young Namekian nodded his head. The time chamber has been prepared for when Vegeta had announced it to Izuku. I can't wait to see how much stronger he has become in the later future. He will be a great ally to us, and I can't wait to see how he progresses. Dend said, as Piccolo nodded. Standing near the edge of the lookout, he saw the approaching forms of Gohan and Izuku as they were moving closer to the lookout. Well, it appears that they are arriving, so what are you going to use the rest of the time in there for? I know that it only took a year for Gohan to master Super Saiyan in there. How long do you think it will take Izuku? Dend asked, as the 2 boys got closer. It might take a few years in there, but with the training that we're going to be giving the boy, both mental and physical, he might just become the strongest of all of us barring Goku and Vegeta. Piccolo said, as Dend nodded. I look forward to that then. I heard from Goku that there is a tournament coming up between the Destroyer Gods. He wants to have some people join in for it. Dend said, as Piccolo nodded his head. I will join up with him and will bring my protege. Gohan had mastered the training I gave him, and it will be his choice to join us. Piccolo said, as Izuku landed near him. I'm back, master, Izuku said, as Piccolo nodded. Alright, let's head inside the time chamber, Piccolo said, as the group of 3 entered the hyperbolic time chamber. As Izuku and Piccolo were entering the chamber, Gohan said his hello to Dend and spoke to him whilst both Izuku and Piccolo were standing across from one another inside the chamber. Wow, this place seems to be infinite. I can't wait to begin to train in here. Although it appears that the gravity is at least 10 or 20x more than Earth's. Izuku mumbled to himself as Piccolo smirked. That's right, the time chamber's gravity has been increased by 10 times that of the Earth's. In the 2 years that we will spend here, you will learn how to become strong enough to master Super Saiyan, and then you will join me for a universal tournament between Destroyer Gods. Piccolo said, as Izuku nodded his head. And during this time, you want me to not only master Super Saiyan, but the next level as well? Izuku asked, as he got into his fighting stance. That is correct, but don't think that it will be that easy. I am a driver when it comes to training. Give me everything you got, Piccolo called out, as both fighters clashed in the air within the chamber. As they continued to fight in the time chamber, Gohan had finally entered the room as he watched as Izuku and Piccolo had sparred with one another. The fight was intense as both fighters had gone all out in their fight, as Izuku was struggling to keep up with the Namekian as the fighter was faster than his quirk-powered-up Super Saiyan transformation. Gohan watched from the ground as he kept a close eye on Izuku, as his fighting style was a mix of both the fighting style he came to this world with and Piccolo's. As they both clashed in the air, Gohan had taken to a meditation style of training as he trained with his more powerful version of himself during the events that happened against Majin Buu. With the 3 of them sparring with one another themselves via mental image training, Izuku had been quick to try and keep his Super Saiyan transformation up at all times in order to make sure that it was capable of being used at all times. Piccolo was happy that this student of his was happy with fighting in order to protect at all times, in order to make sure that Goku and Vegeta weren't the last ones to fight the new threat. Izuku was also the perfect opponent to spar with, since the boy had come up with different strategies in order to come after him during the 2 years that they spent in there. It wasn't until Vegeta was standing near the time chamber himself, since there was something new happening outside that required both of them to be at their full potential at the moment. As soon as the door opened up, he found Piccolo, Gohan and Izuku exiting the room looking much stronger than they were before entering, and he smirked. I take it that Izuku has increased his power to the point that he can stay in Super Saiyan at all times? Vegeta asked, as Piccolo nodded his head. With our training he has managed to actually master Super Saiyan and access a whole new level of power. Piccolo said, placing a hand on the boy's back as Izuku powered up to the next level of Super Saiyan. Vegeta was shocked at how fast the boy increased in power as he smirked to himself as he looked at Gohan standing at his full power he was at during the Buu events. I can't believe that all it takes is a couple days for Gohan to be back at full power, but I can hardly believe that Izuku has trained enough to gain the second level of Super Saiyan. But with me training him soon after the tournament, I will make sure that he enters the level of godhood. Vegeta said, smirking at Izuku as he smiled back at him. I will wait until then, Vegeta sir. I can't wait to start training under you. Izuku said, as Piccolo scoffed. He will be much harsher than I am. You better prepare your body for much higher levels of gravity training. You better head to Bulma for that right now, brat. Piccolo said, as Izuku nodded and flew off. What's your real goal in getting him as strong as you and Goku, Vegeta? Piccolo asked, more concerned for his student. It is nice to have another person who can stand up to threats that you and the other Earthlings can't defeat. That way you won't have to rely on me and Kakarot during those times. You would have someone who is on par with me and Kakarot to rely on. Me and Kakarot will not always be around in order to protect the Earth when things happen, and we might be too busy in order to keep an eye on it. So having him as strong as possible will make him capable of defending the Earth and those he loves. But with this tournament coming up, it would be nice to have another Saiyan nearby and on hand since he is strong enough to fight. Vegeta said, entering the time chamber with Goku appearing close by. With both fighters entering the time chamber, Izuku could be seen flying towards West City in order to get some training equipment so that he can train at higher levels of gravity. He was about to land in West City when he noticed some movement coming from the mountains nearby. Landing over there, he found himself looking at a person who had been through some rough things, and as he made his way over, he found out that it was a ship from seemingly outer space. Entering the ship, he walked through the place in order to get to see what it was about and found that it was a very highly advanced one indeed. Looking into the main compartment, he found that there was someone who was similar to Frieza in stasis inside as he looked closer at the individual. He was then surprised when the individual inside opened his eyes and glared at him with hatred and exploded the pod and grabbed his face. You are not my brother. Who are you and where am I? The new arrival said, as Izuku stared at the giant of an alien. My name is Midoriya Izuku. And I am just checking out this ship. Why, your brother was killed by Goku about a couple months ago. Izuku said, as the new arrival nodded and placed the boy on the ground. The new arrival looked around the planet as he tried to gauge his situation as Izuku moved next to him in curiosity. What is your name, sir? I'm sure that you looked similar to Frieza, but you seem to be slightly weaker than him in terms of power. Izuku said, as the giant alien looked at him. Frieza gained a new power. Preposterous. The alien said, as Izuku picked up his phone and showed the alien the new form of Frieza. So he has a golden form. And I had wanted to kill him for sealing me away in this ship for a few hundred years. The new arrival said, as Izuku looked at him in a questioning manner. My name is Cooler, and I am Frieza's older brother. I only seek out the strongest warriors in order to prove that I am the strongest. The now named Cooler said, as he glared hard at Izuku. Nice to meet you, Cooler sir, but is it alright if you can show me your power? I want to know everything I can about you and your race, sir. Izuku said, pulling out a notebook. What do you wish to know, little earthling? Cooler asked, as he sat down in a hovercraft vehicle. What do you wish to learn, little earthling? Cooler asked, as he sat down near Izuku. The boy pulled out a small notebook as he grabbed a pen from his pocket and started asking questions about Cooler's race as well as how they are born with all that power within their body. Cooler answered each and every question with gusto as well as honest answers as he learns that in order to become better than his younger brother, he would have to treat others with a different kind of way of speech and mannerisms compared to Frieza. As soon as the questions were lowered and Izuku had gotten his fill of what he wanted to know about Cooler and his race, he stood up and got ready to leave. "Where are you going?" Cooler asked, concerned. "I'm going to ask Bulma if she could make me a training machine that could increase the gravity for training. There is a tournament coming up between this universe as well as another, and Mr. Piccolo wishes for me to join him," Izuku said, as Cooler nodded. "Well, I will head out into the cosmos in order to rein in my brother's forces and teach them the core values of sparing lives and showing mercy when needed. I will also bring different ideals within my brother's forces and have them work with the Galactic Patrol in order to keep the universe safe from all threats," Cooler said, as he stood up and moved towards his array of buttons for his ship. Jumping out of the ship, Izuku watched as the massive ship had taken to the sky and flown off into the blue sky and became a star amongst the stars. "You really think that he won't come back in order to kill us all?" the second user asked, concerned. "I do think that he will come back, just not to kill us. Seeking out a fight with Goku and Vegeta, probably, but certainly not to kill." Izuku gave his thoughts back as he flew towards West City. As soon as Izuku landed within West City, he had moved about the populace as he made his way towards Capsule Corporation. He knew that he'd find Bulma there, and from what he heard from Vegeta, she wouldn't mind making something for him to be capable of training to attain a new power without the need for training with gods. As soon as he entered the building, one of the workers within it had noticed his presence and called him over in order to see what he was there for. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked, as she had short blonde hair in a bun. The girl was average height as she had a blue and orange colored eye as she asked the question. Izuku was slightly concerned about her eyes, but he shook his head before stating his reason for being there. "I'm here because Vegeta-san told me to ask Bulma-san for some help in my training," Izuku asked, as the girl nodded her head. "Don't you worry, young man. I will inform Mrs. Bulma about your situation and make sure that she comes as soon as possible," the woman said, as she smiled at Izuku. Walking over to sit down at one of the seats, he thought about the training he'd had with Piccolo and Gohan as they were in the time chamber. He had unlocked the full power of Super Saiyan as well as worked extremely hard in order to attain the second level of the power within the Saiyan biology. He was kind of miffed that he wasn't getting more powerful based on his human biology, but he couldn't help it when his quirk acted in a way to preserve his life. Soon after waiting in the room, a blue-haired woman walked into the room smoking a cigarette as she took notice of Izuku. "Ah, you must be Midoriya-san. Nice to meet you. My name is Bulma Briefs, head scientist of Capsule Corporation." Bulma introduced herself as Izuku nodded. "So what did Vegeta send you over here for?" she asked, as she leaned over to look at his body type. I came here in order to get some training tech so that I could train at higher levels of gravity," Izuku said, as Bulma nodded her head. "Sure thing. What is the maximum gravity you want to be training at?" she asked, as Izuku thought about it. "About 2,000 times Earth's gravity," Izuku said, as Bulma whistled as she nodded. "I can have that made by the end of the day. In the meantime, if you wish to use some gravity chambers within our halls in order to jumpstart your training in higher levels of gravity, just head down the halls and turn to your left and it should be on the right side of the hall," Bulma said, as she walked away in the opposite direction. Following her advice, Izuku walked down the hallway to his left and continued down until he found the words "Gravity Room" on the right and entered the room. Inside he found a young boy with blue hair and purple eyes using the room for training, and as soon as the boy noticed his presence, he looked confused. "You aren't my dad," the boy said, as Izuku moved further in. "No, I'm not, but I came here to get a jumpstart on my training for higher levels of gravity," Izuku said, placing his backpack on the ground nearby. "Well, the gravity is already at 10 times that of Earth's gravity. Is that the max you can take at the moment?" the boy asked. "At the moment, I haven't felt anything more than 10 times, so I guess you could say that I have acclimated to it," Izuku said, as the boy smirked. "Well then, let's train at the higher levels of 20 times Earth's gravity." The boy smiled, as he turned up the dial as Izuku entered the area. Feeling the gravity increase on his entire body as well as making his bones creak slightly, Izuku got a feel for it without his super forms as he wanted to increase the power of his base in order to master the new forms within the gravity. You know, for a human you sure are handling 20x gravity of Earth's very well. You are sure that you aren't one of the Z fighters? The boy asked, as Izuku nodded as he thought about something. Well, I guess you could say that I am a new member. Izuku asked, as the boy got into a fighting position in his Super Saiyan form. New member, huh? How strong are you? He asked, as Izuku cracked his neck as he slowly powered up to his max in base form. Strong enough that one of my most powerful forms were capable of keeping up with Frieza when he was only using about 10% of his power at max. Izuku said, as he smirked at the boy. Wait, you fought against Frieza when he came here? Question mark. What did he look like? The boy asked, incredulous. Well, he was shorter than I first thought he would. Then again, he was an alien from outer space. Izuku said, as the boy gained a battle-ready smirk. I can't wait to train with you for the time you're here then. The boy said, as Izuku asked a question before starting the spar. What's your name then, Squirt? Izuku asked, allowing his older age to make him slightly cockier. My name is Trunks Briefs, and I am the technical prince of Saiyans whilst my dad is the king by technicalities. But my mother is Bulma, and I can't wait for this spar to start. The boy, now named Trunks, said, as Izuku smirked. They flew at the other in the increased gravity, Izuku more sluggish since he wasn't using a powered-up form, just his maxed-out base form. They clashed in the chamber as they went blow for blow, Izuku's punch being powered up by 1 for all slightly as they clashed with their arms and legs whenever they went for those strikes. You seem to have a lot of power behind your strikes, but you don't seem to be a master of any martial arts. How old are you? Trunks asked, as they disappeared and reappeared around the place. My name is Izuku, and I didn't have the time to learn a martial art other than when I first came here. And just to let you know, I am 16. Izuku said, as he sent a punch to the boy's face as he dodged the attack. Jumping back from the other, Trunks decided to get slightly angered at Izuku for holding back on him in the spar. Aren't you going to power up into a stronger form? I know you're hiding some power inside of you. The boy taunted as Izuku stared at him. I don't want to hurt a 6-year-old. Izuku said, as he looked away. Dude, I'm a half Saiyan. I can take a hit or two. I took on Majin Buu when he was a real threat about a few months ago. Trunks called out, angered for being looked down upon. Keeping an eye on the young man, Izuku decided to oblige to the boy's pride, and he got into a stance as he wanted to make it seem slightly harder than it should. The boy in front of him gained a smirk when Izuku's power started to fluctuate as well as his aura turned from a mere white in energy to a lime green in color. He was awed by how Izuku's power over his aura was mastered to look different from his very own yellow. Wow, are you a legendary Super Saiyan or something? Trunks called out excited. No, it's because of my hair. It's been green all my life and I think my aura decided to take on its color to seem more intimidating. Izuku said, chuckling. He then absorbed his excess energy into his body as he calmed his look to that of being more serious than he was before as he gave a come-along gesture to the boy. He didn't take too kindly to it as he launched at Izuku, who increased the gravity of the chamber in order to make it more of a challenge for himself and Trunks. It was increased to 100x the Earth's gravity as he found himself struggling to stay standing in the room as the boy seemed to be moving around at high speeds. You can't handle 100x Earth's gravity, huh? The boy asked, cockily. Can't say I have, but there's no other way to learn than from the pain that comes with it, huh? Izuku taunted back as the boy yelled, powering up and launching to him. Needless to say, Izuku had managed to defeat the brat, but he was also glad for a great fight with the kid as he left with a capsule for his training. It had been a couple of days since Izuku had left Capsule Corporation with the gravity chamber that he was allowed to use. He had heard from Piccolo that there was a few hours before the tournament of destroyers and he had to be at Capsule Corporation within the next hour to be able to head there. And as soon as he arrived in the yard of Capsule Corporation, he found Vegeta standing not far from him with a smirk on his face as he saw Izuku's increased power in base. You've gotten stronger, Runt. I can't wait to see the heights you can attain with all the training you've managed to do. You might become even better and stronger than Gohan here, Vegeta said, as Izuku chuckled at Vegeta's barb towards the other half Saiyan. Nana was standing near him as the prince had moved back as Whis had appeared and saw Izuku standing near them with a smile. Well, it seems like all the contestants had arrived for this battle. I can't wait for you all to come to this tournament, let's get there as fast as possible. Whis said, as he placed everyone in the giant cube and took off into the cosmos. They soon arrived at an uninhabited planet as they placed a dome over it with a tournament stage where fighters from each universe would duke it out. As soon as they entered the area, they saw Whis' sister Vados moving about the area with papers for some kind of test. Alright, before we even start the tournament, we will have those participating in it take this test in order to be fully prepared mentally as well as physically for when it comes in. The female angel said, as Izuku noticed another shorter person behind her. He was wearing some kind of armor on his chest and had a very weird aura about him. It was here that the vestiges confirmed to him that this was Universe 6's version of Saiyans. He couldn't help but smile at the young man as he smiled back before getting back to the test. It was long and boring, but Izuku had passed with flying colors that made Gohan proud. Sitting in the stands with his team consisting of Goku, Vegeta, Piccolo, him and Monaka, a young alien that was seemingly a mailman for the universe, everything was set up. I wonder how the tournament will be set up, do you know, Mr. Piccolo? Izuku asked, as Piccolo stared at the wall. I guess it will be kind of like Earth's version of the Tenkaichi Budokai. There will be matches in one-on-one fights, where those within the ring cannot be allowed to be taken out of the stage or else it is a ring out. Whoever wins will go on to the next round. Piccolo informed Izuku as the boy took out a notebook and wrote everything down. As soon as the fights were set, Izuku saw that he would be fighting against the alien guy who looked eerily similar to Frieza, and he knew that he shouldn't take any chances with that guy. Anyone who seems kindly is a massive threat to those who don't see it, and Izuku had seen those who acted kind but who were evil on the inside. And from what he saw of his opponent, he knew that this man was only in it for the money as well as glory. The first match between Goku and another guy named Botomo, a yellow fat bear man who had massive shock absorption abilities but couldn't stand against Goku as soon as he started to punch the man into the air and sent him out of the ring with a powerful kick. Goku had moved on to the next match as he was seemingly defeated by Frost as soon as he had attacked Goku, whose vision had become clouded. As soon as Goku was defeated, Izuku had been keeping an eye on the fight with him as well as how Frost moved. He knew that after it was Piccolo's turn it would be him. And if Frost had an ability to make someone dizzy from a single attack, it was probably either he had something similar to paralysis or brought something in. It wasn't long until Piccolo had placed Frost into a situation where he needed to do something, and Izuku noticed how Frost lifted his arm into the bunch of arms that Piccolo had wrapped him tightly with. And that was when his danger sense flared as Izuku called out to Piccolo in a frenzy. "Piccolo, remove your arms, quick," Izuku called out, as Piccolo had moved them just in the nick of time as a small blob of something dropped from Frost's arm. Unknown to most of the others, Izuku had seen what it was and Izuku knew what it was immediately. "Poison?" Izuku asked, as Vegeta looked over at him. "What are you talking about?" he asked, confused. "I saw something drop from the arm of Frost and hit the stage. And from how fast it retracted into his arm, I think Frost brought an outside weapon into the arena," Izuku said, as Vegeta relayed this information to Beerus, who then informed Champa. Hell, even a galactic patrolman had noticed the motion, and the match had been called in order to see what happened. As soon as the judge had looked at Frost's arm, he had noticed that with a small provocation on the wrist a small needle had come out and poked him in the thumb, causing him immediate nausea, and he collapsed on the ground for a moment. Contestant Frost has been disqualified for bringing an outside weapon into the arena. He has broken one of the rules of this battle of destroyers, the judge said, as Frost's face went into a scowl. Jumping off the stage, Piccolo looked over at Izuku and gave him a smile as if to thank him for his warning. Although he wanted to defeat the Frieza lookalike as fast as possible, he knew that this would be a blessing in disguise for himself. "How's that, Champa? Your team had cheated to get as far as he did," Beerus taunted. As Champa stayed quiet, he looked at his other contestants, and the Saiyan young man had entered the ring against Piccolo. As the two fought in the ring, as soon as the match was called into action, both fighters clashed in the ring as they gave it their all. Piccolo just seemed too powerful for the young Saiyan as he managed to place him in a position where he needed to overcome his limits in order to defeat him. As soon as the young Saiyan had tried to attack Piccolo, the man pirouetted around him as he landed a kick on the boy's back and sent him from the ring. As he landed on the ground, he looked back up at Piccolo, who extended an arm out to help him up. "Thank you, sir," the young man said, as Piccolo nodded. "Good fighting, brat, and make sure to try and gain enough power in order to become a Super Saiyan next time. I want a better fight from you," Piccolo said, as he stayed in the ring and meditated. All that was left was Hit, the mysterious fighter from Universe 6, and Izuku could only get bad vibes from him as he watched his mentor stand in his stance in front of the enemy. Izuku kept his eye close on the battle, as he watched as Hit seemingly disappeared from view and reappeared back in his position as if nothing happened before placing his hands into his pockets. As soon as the fists entered his pockets, Izuku watched as his master and mentor had been hit multiple times across his body as he crumbled to the ground as Izuku jumped from his position and ran over to him. "Mr. Piccolo," Izuku called out, as he pulled out a senzu and gave it to his master. What happened?" Piccolo asked, as Izuku told him about what happened. Hit looked at Izuku with intrigue before schooling his emotions as Izuku stood in the arena as Piccolo was taken from the arena and Izuku stood still as he remembered his training. Closing his eyes, he got into his fighting stance before activating his quirk and ki at the same time. Hit looked intrigued by his power-up as Izuku stopped time all of a sudden and moved towards his opponent. Although Izuku didn't truly stop time, it felt like that as Hit had noticed that something was wrong. The boy was gone from view, and he couldn't see him. As he powered himself up into another portion of his power, it was here that he saw that Izuku was right in front of him with a kick lined up for his gut. As he placed his hand there to catch the attack, Izuku twirled in the air and landed a kick to the side of Hit's neck. It didn't seem to do anything before Izuku jumped back away from Hit as the man decided to use his ability to seemingly stop time. "You're finished," he said in Izuku's ear as Izuku heard the words in the stopped time. And Izuku used that time as he felt fists hitting his body at an extremely fast pace before everything stopped. As soon as time resumed, Izuku fell to one knee as he struggled to stand back up from the attacks that happened to him. "What just happened? I just feel pain all over my body," Izuku thought to himself before he shook his head before transforming into Super Saiyan 2. He couldn't get to the third level of Super Saiyan since Vegeta told him that it was apparently too power-consuming to be of any real use. When Izuku had powered up to his maximum and used his quirk at the same time, he found that Hit was looking at him with concern as well as something he couldn't know. He launched himself, activating gear shift as he wanted to see how much he had progressed since the fight against Frieza. And he was pleasantly surprised to see Hit's surprised expression as Izuku landed a hit on the man's gut and sent him skidding across the stage. Taking advantage of the situation, Izuku had pressed on with the pain in his body as he felt time constrict against his body as he struggled to move within the frozen world. He was moving but very, very slowly. As soon as he was in front of Hit, he saw the man pull out a fist, and as soon as he went for the attack, time seemed to release, and Izuku was barely able to grab a hold of Hit's arm and fling himself around him and slam his foot in the lower back of Hit. Sending the man sprawling onto the ground, he paused time again as he went out and just attacked him in the frozen time. Danger sense had combined with Fa Jin in order to tell Izuku when a strike would come in. And as he used Fa Jin in order to increase his speed in order to keep up with the strikes, they created shockwaves within the frozen time zone of the battle as Izuku was finally defeated within the realm, and as soon as time released, Izuku was sent sprawling over to the edge of the arena. Holding on with just his fingers, Izuku had started to climb up the edge when he heard the sounds of feet clopping on the ground not far away. When he pulled himself over the edge, he found Hit staring at him with a confused expression on his face before it morphed into a grimace before he went for another strike. Izuku dodged the attack since he used float in order to pull himself away. Releasing his transformation, Izuku had moved away from the edge as he breathed heavily as he held his right arm. Izuku stood there collecting his breath when he finally noticed how time had stopped once more, and he gained a fearful expression. He saw that Hit was on the ring and he had been on the ground as he felt pain all over his body. Leaning up to see where he was, he found that he was off the ring, and he was lifted up to the higher levels of the arena as Piccolo had placed him on the spot next to him as he gave his student a senzu bean. "There you go, young man, you did great against someone who could stop time," Piccolo said, as he smiled at his mentor. "That just means that I have to get stronger. I know that if I could move in the frozen time, I could defend myself. I can't wait until I'm strong enough to shrug it off," Izuku said, as Piccolo ruffled his hair. Vegeta had gone up next as he battled Hit, and it was a one-sided fight as Vegeta was tossed around the ring in his blue form, as it was treated as if he was a mere child. Once it was time for Goku's turn in the ring, he was all they had left besides Monaka as the young man had been frozen in fear. Goku had entered the battle knowing that Hit could stop time, and he had to see what it felt like in order to make a counter. And halfway into their match, it was shown that he was able to do so with a new power-up that Izuku had never heard of before. Think about the Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 scene of Goku unlocking SSBKK and nearly defeating Hit with his attack. As Goku had used this new power in order to beat Hit's time skip ability, he had used a selection of kicks that sent the man high into the air as Goku charged a massive Kamehameha. It was blasted in Hit's direction as the man placed his hand out to stop the attack from doing any serious damage to himself, and Goku placed even more power into the attack, causing a massive explosion. It was here that as soon as it was finished, Goku had fallen out of the ring due to his body's damage catching up to him as the ring was brought back to normal as Monaka was now against the assassin of Universe 6. Needless to say, Hit had allowed the attack to hit him since the newcomer had been completely fearful of him from the beginning. And as soon as Monaka landed a singular soft punch to the man's torso, Hit looked down at it for a second before launching himself from the ring and landed outside of the ring. As that happened, Universe 7 was declared the winner as Champa started to bawl about how he was supposed to win and threw a hissy fit. It was here that someone new showed up, and his presence made Izuku think of All For One's first appearance when he was learning how to control One For All for the first time. The man's oppressive aura had been massive to him and fearfully seemed like nothing could hurt him. The one he feels right now is making him believe that if the person in the ring standing in front of Champa and Beerus would find him, he would kill him on the spot as Izuku hid behind Piccolo. The new arrival in the arena caused everyone to stare on at the newcomer in both fear as well as trepidation. "Can someone tell me why two of my destroyer gods are battling it out over a planet that belongs in Universe 7? The new figure asked as he gave a seemingly happy smile at both destroyer gods, and they were immediately fearful. Nothing Zeno-sama. Both destroyer gods called out, sweating on their foreheads. As the short being whose presence made Izuku tremble in both fear as well as anticipation for what was about to happen, he watched as Goku moved forwards. Everyone was watching as what the man was about to do next as he started to play with the being that even Beerus and Champa were fearful of. As the interaction continued, Izuku was beginning to get fearful of his life as well as extended lifespan within the new world he was learning to master the power within. It wasn't until after the Omni King had started to smile that Izuku gained a concerned expression as the small being had started to laugh. And as soon as he had managed to laugh at Goku's antics, he declared the full-blooded Saiyan a close friend. Izuku's blood ran cold. Befriending someone who can end the lives of the entire multiverse on a complete whim was not a good thing to do in hindsight. But at the same time, it could be an ally to use in harsh times when they can't stop a multiversal-level threat. And now that Izuku had witnessed God Ki in general against Hit when Vegeta and Goku managed to use their blue forms against him, Izuku was getting pumped in order to learn this new power. Looking at Piccolo, he smiled at him as he asked a singular question. "Is there a way to learn God Ki, Mr. Piccolo?" Izuku asked, as Piccolo looked at him confused. "You are looking at the king of all creation as well as destruction, and you are thinking about attaining power that Goku and Vegeta are holding?" he asked, incredulous. "If someone is that powerful, and strong enough to erase an entire multiverse, we need to prepare for when he falls into villainy. If we aren't strong enough to stop him from destroying the entire macrocosm of the multiverse, how are we to call ourselves heroes?" Izuku asked, as Piccolo let that information sink in. "Should the Omni King ever become evil enough to erase everything from existence, we wouldn't stand a chance. I don't even think that we could attain that level of power, but it makes my blood boil for making sure that we could gain that power." Just got to make sure to have a great training partner for it. Piccolo thought to himself before nodding to Izuku. It was eventually stated that the Omni King wanted to have a tournament set up in the future with all the universes and that every universe would set up its own warriors. But that would be in the near future, and as soon as the King of Everything left, it was decided that Beerus would get the wish as Champa left with his proverbial tail between his legs as he was saddened. As Champa left, they all had summoned Shenron from the Super Dragon Balls, and as they went through the experience of being consumed by him before his presence appearing once again. Beerus made his wish as he smirked to himself as he thought of only one thing in his mind as he picked his nails. You better be happy with my generosity, Champa. I won't be doing this again. Beerus thought as his wish was to restore planet Earth within Universe 6 back to its original form. With the wish made, everyone returns to Earth as Vegeta moved over to Izuku and gave him his praise for his strength. But in order to attain God Ki he would have to train for months with him and Piccolo in order to bring it out. Apparently, he needed to be exposed to God Ki enough for him to be capable of the transformation. And that is what they set out to do, and it was surprisingly extremely hard in order to attain the power to do so as his power rose to new heights within the time chamber. They would do that kind of training every once in a while, since Izuku's outside age would become a problem since he was physically older than when he first arrived when he was only around 17 mentally. But they took him to train for the next few months and they were happy that he took to it like a fish to water. And it would be until the very day that a familiar machine made by Capsule Corporation would arrive in the backyard of the place holding someone very familiar. Izuku during this time had been in his newly acquired god form as he trained to master the form and make it his new base. It had been about a few months in terms of training in the time chamber, but outside it was only a couple of weeks since the tournament. Hell, even Goku had managed to get control of his problematic energy distortion again as he was capable of rejoining the training with Vegeta in order to gain even more power. Izuku was in the forest with Piccolo as the Namekian had been keeping his distance in order to watch over Izuku meditating in order to reign in his power. It was so much and ever since he mastered his power of one for all within the time chamber with Vegeta and Piccolo, he had been capable of releasing power that was at least 6 times stronger than All Might. And with his Super Saiyan, and Super Saiyan 2 transformations he was able to make them be combined with the God Ki in order to power them up even more. He was happy that his training was paying off, and that his mastery of God Ki was becoming more and more apparent. Hell, even Beerus had come by one day when he was visiting as he sensed Izuku's power and made a note of it to his face. He wasn't as strong as the god of destruction still, but it was enough to be placed on his radar at least, not that he wanted to, but the god took an interest in him. Gohan had been on his way over to their training site as well since he had wanted to check up on Izuku's mental training skills in order to make sure that he wasn't falling behind in the thinking department. A strong fighter wasn't just made from pure power, that was his father, but a strong tactician as well. As the young Saiyan hybrid had arrived in the location he found Piccolo watching over a meditating Izuku as they both smiled. He should be close to unlocking his blue form as well, correct? What color do you think it will be? Gohan asked, curiously. I don't know, but all his forms had been a different variation of his green hair. Who knows, maybe he'll call it Super Saiyan Lime. Piccolo said, as he chuckled a little before they heard Izuku speak. I might call it that. Izuku mumbled to himself as Piccolo placed a hand over his face. You were saying Piccolo? Gohan asked, smirking at his old mentor. He's one of the best students I've had other than you, Gohan. He's gotten stronger than everyone within the last year so far. He will become one of the strongest fighters that Earth has ever produced. Piccolo informed as Gohan smiled. As soon as that happened both fighters noticed a massive but familiar energy landed near Capsule Corp and they were confused. Are you sensing what I am? Gohan asked, concerned. Yes, but why am I sensing Trunks' energy over at Capsule Corporation? Wasn't he in the future dealing with the androids? Piccolo asked, as Gohan could only nod and look over at the meditating Izuku. Well, at least he could offer his services. You know how much of a heroic boy he is, Piccolo said, as Gohan nodded. It kind of sucked that Goku and Vegeta weren't on Earth right now, but they had their very own powerhouse on the planet at the moment who was meditating. Runt, get over here. We have to go meet someone, and they might need our help. Piccolo said, as Izuku jumped out of his skin looking over. Alright Piccolo-san. Izuku said, as he ran after the duo as they flew off. As soon as the trio had arrived at Capsule Corporation, they found Bulma looking to the sky with some fruit as well as ice cream in her hands. Please tell me Bulma's not trying to bribe Whis to come here for that? Izuku asked, more like pleaded. Sorry, but it looks like she is. Landing near Bulma, she took notice of them as she ran over. Guys, it's been a while since we last saw one another. Come quick, someone came back from the future, and we need a Senzu bean. Bulma said, as Gohan immediately flew off towards the tower. I'm on it. Gohan called out flying away. Making their way into the place, they soon found the unconscious form of what seemed to be Trunks, but with blue hair and not purple. Bulma, who is that? Izuku asked, as Bulma looked at him like he was crazy. What, have nobody talked about him yet? He's my son from a different timeline, and if he's here, then something must be terribly wrong. Bulma said, as Izuku nodded. As Gohan returned with a Senzu bean, she gave it to the unconscious and in pain future Trunks on the couch. As the young man had eaten the bean, he slowly healed and started to open his eyes, and he looked at everyone. Where am I? Trunks asked, as Izuku moved forward. Are you Trunks? Izuku asked, meekly. Trunks then gave a small smile as he introduced himself. My name is Trunks, yes, and I come from a future where it was supposed to be saved from any threats. But a new one arrived and started wreaking havoc amongst those within it, and there hasn't been anything I could do but give him more strength. Trunks said, as Izuku pulled out a notebook. What abilities has he shown? Izuku asked, as everyone watched as the young boy started to interrogate Trunks. After the impromptu interrogation that future Trunks had been completely taken off guard from, he looked at everyone who was laughing heartily. He then saw his mother standing laughing at Izuku's expense as he moved and gave her a hug. I'm so sorry. I couldn't save you from him. Trunks said, as everyone got worried. What happened, Trunks? Bulma asked, as Trunks began his tale within his world. Within the world of the future, we could see a young man running through the ruined cityscape as he held onto something in his arms. Looking down at it, he could only hope that he got to the time machine as fast as possible and returned to the past in order to get some help with this new foe. But as soon as he arrived at the place where his mother was located, he was attacked, and as he managed to escape with his life, the same couldn't be said for his own mother, who in a desperate attempt to give him time to leave ran towards the foe. It was revealed to be a man similar to Goku who was wearing a black garb of Goku's original orange-colored GI. It was the biggest sign that something wasn't right since Goku was dead in his world and had been for over multiple decades. As he managed to enter his time machine, he had placed the fuel inside of it and prepared for a journey back in time. But as he was about to leave, his time machine had seemingly stopped in the air, as someone was holding him there. Looking at who it was, he saw the man who had caused all this chaos, Goku Black, and he was charging a blackened version of Goku's signature attack, the Kamehameha. As soon as it was about to hit his time machine though, a small blast from the ground destroyed its course and had it sail over his time machine, allowing him to escape from the timeline. The last thing he saw was the woman who had been by his side throughout the entire thing, as she smiled at him as she charged towards the foe who had plunged their world into darkness. That bastard had killed you in front of me, and I couldn't do anything to stop him. I failed Gohan as a hero, I couldn't even save one person. Trunks said, as tears came out of his eyes. Izuku moved forward as he placed a hand on the taller boy's shoulder as he looked up at him with tear-filled eyes. Don't worry, Trunks, you would find a way to defeat them. If you defeated the androids in your timeline from training back here, then you can surely do it again, right? Izuku asked, as Trunks nodded as he gained a spark in his eyes. Well, if you want to train using the time chamber, you might have to wait for that. Vegeta had destroyed it by powering up last time before the tournament with Goku as well. Piccolo said, as they all moved out into the field. It was right here that Goku and Vegeta had arrived with Whis as they looked around to see what the issue was, and as soon as they found Trunks, the boy attacked Goku. As Trunks started to fight Goku, Izuku and the others began to worry for the young man as his outburst had gotten Goku to go Super Saiyan immediately since he wasn't prepared for the young man to attack him already. As Goku revealed himself to Trunks as the true original Goku, the young man had finally relented his attack on the man as he apologized as he sat in front of everyone. Relaying his story to Goku and Vegeta about what has been happening in the future, Izuku had been standing outside as he thought about the future timeline of events that Trunks was referring to. Piccolo moved over with Gohan to see what was wrong with Izuku as the young man had been in a thoughtful position the entire time. "What is on your mind, Izuku?" Gohan asked, placing a hand over Izuku's shoulder. "I just can't figure out how he was capable of coming to this exact portion of the timeline," Izuku said, as he tried to wrap his head over the information. "What do you mean?" Piccolo asked, as he stared at his protege. The fact that this Trunks had went through time to create this version of events from changing something that was meant to happen is completely breaking the laws of time itself. You can't change the future because it has already happened. All you would be doing is changing the future events to happen in a different dimension. But then that proposes a new problem, Izuku said, pausing a bit for the last bit of information. "What is this problem?" Bulma asked, as she overheard the talk. What if this Goku Black coming to Trunks' timeline was somehow the timeline trying to fix the events that were supposed to happen? Izuku asked, as everyone gained a thinking expression as Beerus and Whis had arrived in the background. As everyone tried to wrap their minds over the problem that was fixing Trunks' timeline of events, Izuku noticed that there was a fluctuating power appearing in the sky. He had no idea what this would be for, but he knew that there was one thing wrong with this world that Trunks had come to. The young man had no idea who Izuku was and why he was there, and the simple fact that Izuku didn't belong in this world, much less the universe, was very constricting on his heart and mind. With the simple fact that Beerus and Whis had been more attuned to keeping him around for a potential fighter to grow enough to challenge the Destroyer God, Izuku was more worried about what would have happened if he appeared in the future timeline where Trunks was living. But that was beside the point. Izuku looked to where everyone was looking at in the sky as they found a massive black portal in the air as a man looking similar to Goku had appeared wearing the black equivalent of Goku's training gi. Moving forward, Goku was about to fight this individual as Izuku moved forwards first since he wanted to test the god powers that he unlocked over the last few months of training with Piccolo, Gohan and Vegeta whenever the man came around. "Goku, as much as I would love to watch you fight this version of you, could I test myself against him?" Izuku asked, looking at the warrior. "I don't see why not, just make sure to let me have a turn next time," Goku said, as Izuku nodded his head as he floated into the sky. "Who are you? You aren't supposed to be here," the new arrival said, as he glared at Izuku. "I am Midoriya Izuku, and I am only going to test my powers against you if you don't mind," Izuku said, as he powered up to maximum, causing the new arrival to look at him with awe as well as disgust. "To think a mortal such as yourself had gained the powers of a god. That isn't meant for you, mortal," the Goku lookalike said, angrily. "I know, but I would like to see how you would fare against me. Also, just to be sure, your name is Goku Black, right?" Izuku asked, just trying to be sure. "Yes, I am Goku Black, and I will permanently erase your existence from all of time," Black said, as he flew towards Izuku. Moving to the sky, Izuku dodged each and every strike of the villain as he memorized each and every attack pattern of the foe before he launched an attack. Needless to say, the strike hit harder than Black could handle as he was sent flying into a rock face off in the distance. Flying off in the distance to find Black, Izuku landed nearby as he looked at the rock face with scrutiny as he tried to find the energy of his opponent. If there was anything Izuku still needed to learn in terms of fighting was how to sense the energy of his opponent before they could strike. And this was all without him using his quirk in order to sense the danger of the opponent at the moment, no pun intended. As soon as the rock face exploded, Izuku got into a fighting stance that was similar to a style he created on his own that would make the best of the fighting styles of both Gohan and Piccolo combined. Staring his enemy down, Izuku flew faster than Black could perceive as he appeared behind the villain and kicked him to the dirt. Running up to the villain, he grabbed the back of his clothes before tossing him in the air and launching a ki blast into his back, sending him back to the group at Capsule Corporation. As Black got out of the dust and debris looking perfectly fine, he felt the damage inside his body as he felt himself grow stronger. He's holding back on me on purpose. Even though he is in a form that could easily kill me in a singular blow. Black mused as Izuku appeared in the sky, coming in for a kick to the villain's head. Dodging the strike to the head, he went for a kick of his own towards Izuku, who grabbed the leg, surprising the foe completely before spinning him in the air and tossing him into the sky as hard as he could. Moving faster than Trunks could perceive, he as well smashed his left fist into Goku Black's stomach as the villain coughed up a crud ton of blood as he was launched even higher in the air. Hee hee, ha, ha 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 ha, what is so funny, villain? Izuku asked as he moved closer to Black. I am getting stronger from you damaging me enough to recover fast enough. I thank you for the donation of power you placed into my body. Goku Black said, as he started to giggle maniacally. Okay, I got a masochistic villain on my hands. Izuku said aloud to himself as Black became a blushing mess. I am not a masochistic villain. I am bringing peace to the multiverse because of that brat's meddling of time. Black said, as he tried to get the blush off his face. What is this so-called plan of bringing peace, if you don't mind me asking? Izuku asked, as he floated towards the villain. I killed every single god of destruction as well as their counterparts almost as fast as it did to turn off every single angel. Black boasted as Izuku started to chuckle. So does that mean you actually fought the gods of destruction themselves, or did you kill the supreme kaises that are connected to them? Izuku questioned. In order to kill a god of destruction, you need to kill their counterpart. There is no other way to do so unless you have the power to completely kill them on your own. Black said, as Izuku looked at him with a deadpanned expression. Black, as much as your growth of power has concerned me, killing the gods of destruction via killing their counterparts, the gods of creation isn't a worthy way of killing a god of destruction based on Saiyan DNA. If you wanted to kill the gods of destruction on your own merits, you would have challenged them to a battle to kill them yourself instead of going the easy route. Izuku said, sighing in complete and utter pity. What are you talking about? I could easily take on a god of destruction on my own. Black said, as Izuku glared at him. Oh really? Then why is your power so pitiful then? You only are strong enough to do damaging blows to me if I was only a Super Saiyan or base form. You can't hurt me without even growing in power to the point that you would surpass me. Izuku said, as he floated closer to the villain. I will make you eat those words, mortal. Black called out, as Izuku prepared himself for round 2 of his fight. But then something weird happened. The villain acted like he was being sucked up by something, and as Izuku made a note of what it was, he started to charge a full power blast in order to end the fight as quickly as possible. Pulling his arms in a formation that was eerily similar to Piccolo's use of the light grenade, as well as Vegeta's final flash techniques, Izuku charged a full-powered attack towards Black as the villain was being pulled away. Once Izuku was completed in charging his attack, he had to think of an attack name for it, as Izuku wanted to incorporate the names Piccolo and Vegeta used for their ultimate strikes. Pulling his power into one hand, Izuku lifted it above his head as the ball of energy grew to magnanimous amounts in size as Izuku grit his teeth in order to get prepared. Flashing bomber! Izuku screamed out, as he threw the giant emerald-colored bomb of an energy attack towards Black. As the attack closed in on Black, the man looked over at the people on the ground before noticing a time machine on the ground being prepped for a round trip. Smirking to himself, he pointed his hand towards the machine and blasted it with enough power to destroy it to smithereens so that he wouldn't have to worry about Trunks. But that was just when the flashing bomber attack smacked right into him, sending him into the portal, as well as the attack itself through time as he landed back in the future timeline, with the attack exploding an entire destroyed city that had no inhabitants inside to nothingness. With the Z fighters, the group had noticed how Izuku floated down in front of them, panting heavily as if he used all his power in order to finish his foe. What did you do that for, Izuku? I wanted a turn, Goku complained as Izuku panted before catching his breath. Goku, are you, seriously, that worried about a fight, that you only care about your opponent? Izuku asked, through heavy breaths. I wanted at least to have a turn against him. Goku complained even more as Izuku looked over at Bulma for a moment as the woman nodded and smacked Goku right up the head. He just did you all a favor by releasing an attack that big against him. For all you know, he could become an even greater threat in the future, if he survives that attack. Bulma said, as Izuku sat on the ground recovering. That was some serious power you threw, but in terms of overall power, you are sitting between at least 5–10% of my full power. Good job. Beerus complimented as Izuku nodded his head. As Trunks talked about how he couldn't return to the future timeline anymore, Gohan and Piccolo had gotten to Izuku and pulled him away from the group in order to talk to him. What was the plan of that bastard anyway? What was he after? Piccolo asked, as Izuku regained his energy enough to speak. He wanted to bring peace to the multiverse. How he did it though is really concerning. Izuku said, as both fighters looked to one another before asking him. How did he do so? He killed each and every Supreme Kai, the gods of creation, in order to kill the gods of destruction of every universe out there. Izuku explained as both fighters gained a pained expression. We will need to increase our training of you as well as ourselves. We can't afford to let this happen to us right now, Piccolo said, as Izuku nodded, as they all left the others in order to train. Izuku was far in the wastelands with Piccolo and Gohan, both mentors for him, having been training with him relentlessly as Goku and Vegeta dealt with future Trunks timeline shenanigans. Izuku wasn't one for timeline changes, but he couldn't say anything about it since him being present within the world was probably a time discrepancy. He was currently trying to master Super Saiyan God now, since he was capable of achieving the transformation on his own without the use of a ritual that Goku required. His main goal at the moment was trying to make sure that he could stay within the Super Saiyan God transformation without losing any stamina that would allow him to search for even higher grades of power within the Super Saiyan tree. Over the coming days of training though, Izuku would notice that Goku and Vegeta's energy would appear and disappear randomly as if they were doing something wrong in the other timeline. And he put it off as Goku and Vegeta either having trouble with the new threat of Goku Black, or they were helping the boy rebuild his future timeline from the bottom up. That all went out the window as when he and his mentors stopped by at Capsule Corporation one day for a break from training. Goku had arrived with the Omni King Lord Zeno right behind him as he became extremely scared for his life. Also, fortunately for everyone, Goku had teleported away in order to introduce future Zeno to present Zeno so that they could be friends and play with one another whilst Goku and friends had prepared for the next big threat that was to come. So all in all, everything was going to be perfectly fine. He just jinxed it, didn't he? Izuku was relaxing in his makeshift home that Majin Buu had made for him and Nana out of the kindness of his heart, and Izuku was watching TV with Nana. They had been allowing Hercule and Buu over multiple times in order to help them out in terms of making family friends. And Buu had been really helpful with making food pop up out of nowhere so that they could stay stocked up. What they didn't know was that there was a problem on a random planet out in the galaxy where Goku and Vegeta were fighting on again without telling anyone. This time though they had brought Goten and Trunks and were fighting a carbon copy of Vegeta who had a different voice to the original. When Izuku was told of the adventures of Goten and Trunks from their point of view, Izuku had thought that he was missing out on a potential good fight. Wow, that Saiyan blood is really getting to him more so than he originally thought. He will have to tone it down on the training somewhat. But besides from the toning down on training, Izuku felt like he was on the cusp of a new transformation just from the training of Piccolo and Gohan. With him there to train with the young adult, Gohan had returned to his prime of power and had grown immensely since then and proved to be a great sparring partner. His power had grown higher than that of his, but the simple fact that he was an even better sparring partner was music to his own ears. He could increase in power and possibly unlock a new transformation just from training with Gohan. And Piccolo was training immensely and gained even more power than before as well, so he wasn't being left behind. Recently though the mentor had been feeling like he was falling behind more so than usual, so he decided to bite the proverbial bullet and asked Shenron to grant his wish of unlocking his true potential, and boy did it show. Piccolo now had a new transformation that was just as powerful if not more so than Goku and Vegeta. Those two powerhouses would have to fuse in order to take him on, from how Goku worded it when he appeared one day during training. As the days counted more and more into the year, they finally had gotten a message from Lord Zeno about the tournament he was making, and Izuku was antsy from the very beginning. Goku had come to both him and Piccolo as Gohan was too busy with studying a certain subject for teaching his students so they could learn from him on their upcoming test in a few weeks. So with that they had left with Goku, since he didn't wish to bring Buu along, since he wanted to have the Majin have enough strength to assist them in the upcoming tournament within the next few days or possibly weeks to come. Arriving within the area which the exhibition matches were going to happen, Izuku looked at each and every god of destruction as well as their angel guardians and Kais with awe as well as trepidation. The only one who was earning his eternal fear was Lord Zeno, as all-fearing god had been watching each universe very closely. Welcome to the multiversal exhibition match. I am the Grand Priest, and I will be allowing this small match between each universe who are at the bottom in terms of mortal power level. We have Universe 9 who has the lowest mortal power level and Universe 7 who has the second lowest mortal power level. These two will use warriors who are strong to give us a taste of the tournament that will happen within the time frame for when the tournament of power will be held. The Grand Priest said, as Izuku was becoming more nervous. Piccolo stood by his side and rubbed his back as he made sure that his protege was more than willing to fight for his universe. As soon as the matches were set up, Izuku realized that his fight will be with the red dog person from the other universe, and he also noticed something about them. He couldn't sense their energy. It was as if they weren't capable of producing an energy to be sensed, and he ultimately decided to use both his energy and full power of one for all in order to fight. By the way, if Lord Zeno believes that you aren't using your full strength, you will be erased on the spot, no exceptions. The Grand Priest said, as the bar for impressing the God of Gods was now hanging above him. Jumping down into the arena, Izuku got a feel for the ground as he looked closely at it, since it was white in color. It looks and feels like Kachin. I can't wait to see how it holds against my power. Izuku muttered out, I don't see why I have to fight a kid, but whatever. Don't blame me if he is killed though. The Red Wolf man said, as he started to giggle. I hope that you don't take me lightly because I am a young man, because it will be your undoing if you do so. Izuku said, as he glared at his opponent. The Red Wolf stared at him for a moment before cracking his neck as Izuku went through his stretches in order to warm himself up for the fight. Let the first match between universes begin, the Grand Priest called out, as the Red Wolf disappeared from view as Izuku's danger sense had flared up, allowing him to dodge the attack. If anything, the wolf didn't take any heed to the dodge and kept up his attacks as he moved the fight all over the ring as Izuku focused on dodging the anthropomorphic animal with ease. I thought you were telling me to not take you lightly. But it seems like I have you on the back foot, kid. The wolf called out, laughing like a hyena. Okay, Izuku said, as the wolf gained a confused expression when a moment later, he felt pain all over his body. Looking down, he found the boy with his fist straight up into his chest, nearly caving in his ribs in order to smash into his heart. Then the wolf was kicked straight into the jaw, sending him flying into one of the many pillars in the arena as Izuku lowered his foot. That was only about 30% one for all. This guy's power isn't a joke, he just doesn't know how to use it properly. Izuku thought to himself before moving at 100% power in order to catch up to his opponent. As the Red Wolf landed on the ground, he had pulled out some fruit in order to power himself up in order to match Izuku's power. And as they clashed in the middle of the ring, the ground started to quake as well as rupture as their attacks moved so fast that they caused cracks to form. Izuku had been moving faster though, as his power was more uncontrollable whenever he went all out. He had never had an opponent who could withstand 100%. Although he was weaker at the time when he used it against Muscular, it only knocked him out. But with his full power on display, his opponent couldn't keep up with him as Izuku landed blow after blow on his opponent's admittedly more durable form. But it wasn't enough, as Izuku had landed multiple consecutive punches and kicks on the man's sternum before appearing behind him and using a new power to the gods of destruction as well as Grand Zeno to toss his opponent off the ring. But as soon as his opponent had disappeared from the ring, he was teleported back onto it with a look of fear on his face as he stared at Izuku. Izuku then decided to look even more intimidating as he used the other powers of One for All to make himself look more intimidating to his opponent. Basil, quit being an oxymoron. Just finish the fight already. The blue-furred wolf called out. Don't worry, Bergamo. I am going to end this with one more attack. Sorry kid, but your luck has run out. Basil called out, charging a blast with his foot. Izuku then did something that shocked every single person and God in the place as he merely uttered a couple words. Gear shift. Second. Before disappearing from the arena, and Basil was looking around the area looking for Izuku before he felt something grip the back of his neck and his back erupted in massive pain before he passed out from the number of broken bones in his back. He didn't lose his ability to walk and power up, just enough to break his mind from the information and knock him out. As soon as Izuku then slammed his opponent on the ground to signify the end of the match, Izuku jumped away as he was a few feet away from Basil. Smoke was coming off his body in treasure troves as he stared at his opponent Basil lying on the ground as his body trembled in pain. Izuku looked over at the Grand Priest as he landed in the arena and felt the opponent's pulse and nodded. Basil of the 9th universe has been knocked out. Universe 7 wins the first round. The Grand Priest called out as the wolves of Universe 9 had growled audibly. Izuku floated over to Goku and Piccolo as they looked at him with pride as Piccolo asked Izuku a question. Were you in your god form at all? Piccolo asked, quietly as Izuku shook his head. That would be overkill. I could have killed him if I used that form to attack him. Izuku said, he still hates to kill others even if it is for the betterment of humanity as well as Earth's safety. The next match was called as it was Piccolo versus a brown-furred wolf who seemed to be looking at Piccolo with some trepidation. Izuku watched this fight closely as he wanted to learn something new from his mentor as Goku sat next to him. So has your training been great with Piccolo and Gohan? Goku asked, as Izuku nodded his head. It's been great. I've mastered Super Saiyan God ever since the whole Goku Black thing you guys dealt with already. Izuku informed as Goku nodded his head. I can't wait to see how well you do in a fight against me though. In terms of power you are still many times weaker than me and Vegeta. But you're getting there, Goku said, encouraging Izuku to become stronger. I feel like I'm on the cusp of a new transformation, just don't know how to access it. Izuku said, as Goku nodded his head. I know that feeling, it's probably your version of Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan. Goku said, as Izuku looked at him. Huh, that's what you call that form? Izuku asked. What are you talking about? It's a good name, Goku said, indignantly. Well, I've been calling it Super Saiyan Blue this entire time, especially since your name for it is too long. Izuku said, as Goku thought about it and nodded. You win this battle, Izuku. I will win the physical one though. Goku retorted, as Izuku chuckled looking back at the fight, only to see that it was already over. Piccolo had knocked out his opponent with a well-timed light grenade as his opponent lied on the ground in pain as well as swirls in his eyes. Are you wishing to learn that technique, Izuku? Piccolo asked, as soon as he landed in the bleachers. I am, but from what it seemed like you were charging it up for a while. It would leave me wide open for an attack from an enemy. Izuku said, as he mused learning the light grenade. Well, I've never had an opponent who attacked me before launching it. That is just how things are. We start charging an attack and our opponent stands there as if they think they can hold up against it. It's how we've defeated some of our opponents in the past though. Piccolo informed as Goku revealed Super Saiyan Blue to the gods. Bergamo was now many times larger than Goku and Izuku as he was trying to hit the much smaller and nimbler Goku as he smacked right into joints that would cause Bergamo to fall to the ground before Goku released a massive Kamehameha into Bergamo's face. The blue wolf was defeated as he lay on the ground knocked out from the final blast of Goku when the man was challenged to another fight from another person. This person was covered in a cloak and just as he landed in the arena, he took off his cloak revealing a pretty overweight person who had a mustache as Izuku made a comparison to a movie he used to watch. He kind of looks like the Lorax who had went down the path of overeating and gained some height. Izuku muttered to himself as the god of destruction of Universe 11 looked at him with scrutiny. The fight in the arena began soon after Izuku's offhanded comment as Goku was forced to use Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken in order to bring the match to a stalemate. Hey Piccolo, is it just me, or is Goku's opponent hiding a form from us? Izuku asked, as Piccolo nodded. His true power is being hidden from all of us at the moment, probably has something to do with the god of destruction who was glaring at you for your comment. Piccolo informed as Izuku nodded his head. Izuku couldn't hear the conversation between Goku and his opponent who was similar to the Lorax, but he knew that Goku was seemingly excited for something to come. Looking over at his mentor, Izuku stared him in the eye as he asked him a singular question that was on his mind. If Goku's opponents are this strong, why is this new form that I'm trying to attain not coming in? Izuku asked as Piccolo stared at Beerus for a moment before shaking his head. You'd probably have to train with Goku or Vegeta in order to gain that kind of power they have. Just try and attain a form where you incorporate your quirk and godly energy into one being. Piccolo said, as Izuku nodded his head. The training up until the Universal Tournament of the Multiverse was going to be very intense and he couldn't wait to gain a new power within the tournament. After the whole tournament within the land of Xeno, Izuku and the others returned in order to wait for the next 2 days for the tournament stage to be completed. Izuku had spent his time out in the time chamber on his own as he trained his body as well as mind in order to completely make sure that he was prepared for a new transformation. Training with himself as well as a body double of himself, he made sure that he had a perfect sparring partner, that way he could refine his own fighting style against an opponent using the same one as himself. He was training on his own as he made sure that nobody would take note of his increase of power. He knew that power corrupts those who let it do so. And Izuku was here in order to make sure that he could keep his mind from being corrupted enough to want more power for taking over something. He knew that it was physically impossible for him to become a villain, but he couldn't risk it. His quirk as well as Saiyan biology was making him more of a threat if not taken seriously, and the stronger he got the more chances he could turn on everyone. He couldn't even trust himself with everyone else around him as he had been hearing the vestiges keep his mind on the right track. In this universe, everything was falling apart at the seams, and he didn't know if he could stay in a universe where danger is likely to be anywhere. It was in the time chamber that he came to a realization. I am in too much danger in this universe. As glad as I am to be a student of Piccolo and Gohan, I wish to grow on my own. They gave me the stepping stones in order to become stronger, and it is up to me to make sure that I continue this into becoming my very own hero. Like I was back in my world, Izuku said to himself. It had roughly been about 1 full day in the time chamber as Izuku had been training on his own, and he had finally found the form he was looking for. It was a transformation that was entirely unique to himself, and he was happy about it since it allowed him to utilize his quirk's full power as well as his Saiyan biology with ki in order to increase his potential as a fighter, hundreds, if not thousands of times over. As soon as he stepped out of the hyperbolic time chamber, Izuku had sensed the increase of power from Goku and his son in the distance. Leaving the lookout, he bade farewell with Dend as he flew in the general direction of his mentors. As he was flying towards the area where the fight was taking place, Izuku noticed a large white glow coming towards a blue glow with a red glow moving about the outside of it. That's where they are, Izuku called out as he flew towards them. Touching down on the ground nearby, Piccolo the Namekian had looked over at him and smirked as he sensed Izuku's power. Looks like you gained what you wanted. Are you willing to show us or are you waiting for suspense? Piccolo questioned as Izuku cheekily placed a couple fingers to his mouth. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone about your new form. You've made me proud with all the training you did, and you aren't slacking off when you have off days like Gohan has when he was your age. You might become even stronger than he is if you keep this up. Piccolo said, as Izuku looked away from him concerning his master. What's wrong? Piccolo asked, as Izuku looked at the ground. I've gained all my power from learning from you all. And as much as I am happy to learn from you and Gohan. I wish to leave this universe as soon as the tournament of power is over. Izuku said, as Piccolo looked at him not with shock, but with understanding. I understand, you have been the greatest protege I could ever ask for. I certainly hope that Gohan's daughter proves herself to be a fighter soon when she is old enough. Piccolo said, smirking at Izuku. I hope so too, maybe she might have an even higher potential than both me and Gohan. Izuku said, trying to increase Piccolo's wish to train Gohan's daughter. There was a massive explosion of light in the sky causing those on the ground to cover their eyes as they were preparing for the battle of the century. Once the light cleared up, Everyone noticed how Goku was carrying an unconscious Gohan to the ground as the man looked over at Izuku. "Hey there Izuku, it's been a while since we talked to one another huh?" Goku said, before Izuku could say hello. "Why yeah, but I won't be sticking around after the Tournament of Power," Izuku said, as Goku looked at him confused. "What do you mean?" Goku asked, as Izuku explained his situation to the man. "I see, well that's too bad. I wanted to see how much stronger you've gotten since the small tournament Zeni had set up before the actual one," Goku said, as Izuku gave Goku some advice before he left. "I have a bad feeling that Majin Buu is about to do something stupid because of his training. You should probably find a replacement for him should he do something that puts him out of commission," Izuku informed before flying off. With that said, Izuku flew back to where Nana was living currently, and he found her relaxing on the couch inside the home they built with one another. "Hey Izuku, you've gotten much stronger than the last time I saw you," Nana said, as Izuku moved closer to her. "I think it's time you return to my head Nana," Izuku said, as the woman looked at him sadly. "It's been fun, but I can't get pregnant to start a new family since I'm dead and all," Nana said, dejectedly. "I know. But you probably weren't meant to be alive when your vestige was taken from my mind," Izuku said, as she nodded as they flew over to Bulma's place. As soon as they both landed, they found that Beerus and Whis had stuck on the planet just in case as Izuku moved over to them and poked Whis in the hip. The tall angel asked, "See could you place Nana back in my head? In the vestige world?" Izuku asked, as the angel nodded. "This will not be the only thing you will be asking of me, is it?" Whis asked, looking at Izuku and Nana with scrutiny. "Yeah, after the Tournament of Power. I want to change the universe of which I live in," Izuku said, looking at the angel. "Well I can't say that I won't allow this, but which one are you looking for?" he asked, as Izuku thought about it. "See could you take me to the Universe 6 variant of planet Sadala?" Izuku asked, as Whis smiled. "I can do that, of course. But what brought this on to you?" Whis asked, as he placed his staff over Nana's face, and she teleported into Izuku's vestige world as the previous wielders of One for All welcomed her back. "In my personal opinion, Universe 7 has just become too dangerous for me to live the rest of my life within. I just want to live out the last of my days without having too many powerful threats to deal with. I want to settle down and live out the rest of my days and finally die with honor," Izuku said, as Whis nodded. "I can do this after the Tournament of Power," Whis said, as Beerus looked at Izuku. "Well said, you personally would rather be a part of my little brother's universe because it's much safer. I can't say anything wrong about that, but just know, you will be an enemy of my universe if you enter another Tournament of Power on Universe 6 a team," Beerus said, as Izuku nodded. "I won't lose without a fight Lord Beerus," Izuku said, smirking. "I won't have it any other way, especially since you have God Ki," Beerus said, as he smirked back at Izuku. About 5 hours later, everyone was gathered at the home of Bulma as the Tournament of Power was close to beginning, just about half an hour before it started. Everyone was getting antsy as Goku and the last person who would be joining them was taking forever to get there. But it seemed as if Beerus and Whis knew what was happening as they went to go deal with it, and within minutes of leaving they came back with both Goku and Frieza in tow. "Wait, Frieza," Izuku screamed in his mind. He got on guard as the alien creature smirked at Izuku and waved over at him. "Hey guys, got the 10th person like we needed." As it turned out, Izuku was correct in that Buu had fallen asleep due to all the training he underwent. "So I had to go with the only super powerful being I could think of who could keep up with us, Frieza," Goku said, cheerfully. "I will have you know monkey that so long as we win this Tournament of Power, you will revive me with the Earth's Dragon Balls," Frieza said, as Goku nodded. "Kakarot you can't be serious about this?" Quote. Vegeta of all people called out. "What, he's a strong person we can trust," Goku retorted. "Goku, did it ever occur to you that Frieza might betray your trust?" Izuku asked, as Frieza looked at the boy with a mirth in his eyes. "Oh, I like you," the alien said, as Izuku watched as the Emperor licked his lips, causing him to shiver in disgust. Let's just get out of here. I don't wish to be late, Beerus said, as he placed a hand on Whis' back as they teleported away from Earth. And just to let you all know, since Izuku is on the team, he will be replacing Tien. Tien didn't do much in the tournament aside from defeating a couple opponents before being eliminated. Arriving in what Whis called the World of Void, they found themselves in the Tournament of Powers stage where the tournament was taking place. Izuku was in awe of how everything looked as he watched as other universes appeared with their own fighters. He saw that each universe had their own fighters who looked different but others that seemed similar to his own universe. Although what really took away his breath was the girl who was on Universe 6 team. He was surprised that she was that skinny, but her power was as strong as Goku's Super Saiyan 2 form at best if she went all out. But something in his chest had started to crack and felt something thump and click which completely confused him. What the hell was that? Izuku asked the previous wielders. We don't know, but you certainly had a reaction to that woman over there. Nana called out from his mind as Izuku blushed, shaking his head from looking at the woman, who was now looking in his direction and was watching him closely. He looked at the other fighters within the Tournament of Power. He had pulled out a notebook and began to write about their looks as well as their power levels, especially since there were some that couldn't be sensed since they were either robots or didn't have similar key energy signals that he could sense. He was like a kid in a candy store, but there was one person who stood above everyone else in the tournament stage that caused him to shudder from the sheer power he hid within himself. That guy over there, he's way too strong to be here. Why is a god of destruction within the tournament stage? Izuku asked as he looked over at the Pride Trooper who was the leader of the group from Universe 11. Do not go after him. He is way too strong for even you to handle. Your quirk as well as key manipulation just can't find a way to defeat him. Yoichi called out. Nodding, he looked at the other tournament examinees as he noticed how most of them were looking at his universe as Izuku looked over at Goku. You just had to make sure that everyone was against us, Izuku muttered as Goku chuckled. As the last few minutes passed by and the Tournament of Powers stage was completed, the Grand Priest had stepped up on his own platform looking over the stage. With the Tournament of Powers stage complete in its creation, let the Tournament of Power begin, the Grand Priest called out, as each and every universe attacked Universe 7 almost immediately. Universe 7 had luckily moved over to the middle where Gohan and most of the others had gathered in order to keep themselves as close to the middle to avoid being knocked off the stage. Izuku had stayed near Gohan and those in the middle as he wished to conserve his power without running dry too soon. So as explosions as well as people fought one another for survival, Izuku had stuck to the shadows as he asked Piccolo a question. Mr. Piccolo. And Piccolo looked over at the boy. See, could you put me back in my costume that I arrived in Universe 7 with? Izuku asked, as the man smirked. Already trying to make sure you have all the advantages of stealth, huh? He asked, using his clothes beam to change Izuku's clothes. As soon as everything was back on his body, he felt like he was back in his old element as he was wearing what he wore when he arrived at this world. There, you've got your clothes back from your world. Make sure to scare your opponents to running away from you, Piccolo said, before taking off. As Izuku stuck in the middle in the shadows near Gohan and the others, he found out that early on he and his group would be eventually separated from one another. It wasn't much longer than that of about 3 minutes that Goku and Vegeta on their own defeated an entire universe and blasted the last trio off the stage. He was in the middle of a fight with a particularly troublesome opponent who kept getting stronger the longer he stayed in the tournament, who kept growing in power. He was about to knock him off the edge, when the Grand Priest announced something that was both horrifying as well as terrifying. Universe 9 has been completely eliminated from the Tournament of Power. As such, they and their entire universe will be erased from all 12 remaining universes. He called out, as Izuku gained a look of shock as well as fear. The Zenos had then raised their palms and it glowed white as the entirety of Universe 9 and its combatants were completely erased. Shaking his head from the momentary distraction, he knocked his opponent off the edge, causing a particularly troublesome opponent who could become a nuisance later on to be eliminated. He also got to hear the god of destruction Quitella to angrily screech at him as Beerus laughed at him. Got to move on to the next person, and I need to stay away from the edge. If I am too close, I could be knocked out of the tournament early. Izuku thought to himself as he moved on. Izuku had spent his time since leaving the group after the beginning of the tournament of power moving about the shadows as he kept his power low as well as untraceable. Keeping himself hidden, he made sure that he would take out certain threats that would cause the others trouble if they were left alone. Such as that weird gooey person from one of the other universes. He was a real handful if you didn't release some power when he got a hold of you. Izuku had squarely decided that using a burst of his full power could send him out of the arena, and it did. Now he was exploring the arena as he kept his senses as well as danger sense out in order to keep himself from being complacent during the whole battles. He had run into a few of the Pride troopers, but he kicked them away whenever they attacked him, and he ran off losing them in the fight. He was saving his energy for when the bigger threats came in. He had his new form that he could use, but that used way too much power in order to be constantly in use. He was about to turn away from an area when he heard the sounds of combat from one of the other universes. As it seemed someone from another universe had taken that Kabugai off guard and tried to kick him off the arena for being so close to the edge. Izuku watched as Vegeta had come in and saved the young Saiyan from losing in his chance to keep his universe alive. He moved away from the area as he found another opponent who was more leaning towards the gimmicky kind of fighting. He was surprised by how danger sense allowed him to predict every attack the opponent had thrown at him, and he dodged in the direction that the previous wielders of the quirk had told him in whispers. As soon as he took down his opponent, some of the gods had taken his complete mastery of dodging as some kind of insight of something called Magate no Gokui. What in the world were they talking about? Izuku thought to himself as he moved on after sending the fighter off the edge. About 7 minutes had passed since the tournament of power had begun, and since the erasure of Universe 9, Izuku had been hard at work in keeping himself safe from all enemies. He was currently running from a very gimmicky character from the Pride troopers as the man screamed bloody murder at him. "I will send you out of the arena for ignoring me," the little cretin screeched. "I wonder if I put a bell on him if I could dodge his attacks better." Izuku asked mentally as a ghost came to his answer. "Personally, I think you should take him out before he becomes an even bigger problem later," Yoichi said, as Izuku nodded to himself as he hid behind a rock. As soon as the small creature had arrived around the corner, Izuku immediately grabbed his face and pulled it into the darkness as everyone else could only hear the screams of agony as Izuku knocked him out. Leaving the shadows, Izuku ran towards the edge of the arena and looking all directions he tossed the little bastard off the edge and ran back towards the middle. As soon as he left the area, he found one of the Pride troopers had arrived in the area as he found his ally eliminated from the arena. "Kunshi, no," the person called out, as Izuku took his chance to flee. As soon as he turned around, he was face to face with Frieza, as the alien creature stared at him with a mirth in his eyes as he glared slightly at Izuku. "If you think that hiding your true power from me is going to keep you alive, you better think of a better way to do so. I can sense your power, and you're hardly strong enough to be able to take him out without powering up. How did you take that guy on?" Frieza asked, as Izuku stared at the villain. "As much as I would love to tell you, Frieza, you have some company," Izuku said, as the villain turned around, and as soon as he found nothing, he turned back to see that Izuku disappeared from the area. "Clever boy, I will find you again and get my answers," Frieza muttered to himself before leaving. Izuku had been venturing around the arena and fought many different opponents and had a lot of fun. He couldn't wait to meet some more people out there and converse with them, but he didn't get the chance to talk to anyone else when he felt a presence coming in to attack him from behind with danger sense. Dodging to the left, another attack came from the right where he was dodging from as it almost landed on his back as he used his quirk to use Black Whip in order to slingshot himself away from the attackers and onto a rock face. "Well, if it isn't the new opponents that I will be facing." "Who are you?" Izuku asked, turning around, only to blush when seeing the black-haired woman with only a small crop top. "Hey kid, can you tell me how strong that Goku guy is?" the black-haired woman in pink asked. "He's pretty strong, much more powerful than I am currently, but I can be a good fight if you want it," Izuku asked, as the girl smirked. "Well then, how about you show me your power?" she called out, transforming into Super Saiyan and attacking him. Confused as to why she would use the transformation that easily, he shrugged and went into the fight without his Super Saiyan transformation of his own. He wanted to see how much stronger his base was now that it was infused with God Ki of his own, and he was surprised that he was just as powerful as this woman's own Super Saiyan energy in his own base. Clashing across the arena, they moved about the place as Izuku started to build up a sweat as the woman smiled at him. "You're really strong. I fought Goku already and I think you're holding back on me," she said, as she powered up to the next level of Super Saiyan just like that. Must have gone through something as traumatic as Gohan did if she could use that power as easily as that. Izuku muttered to himself, unknowingly getting the woman to hear his words. "What do you mean? I got this form because Goku told me to not place the power all into increasing my own, just place it around my body enough to not lose speed," the woman said, as Izuku stared at her. "You didn't have to go through anything horrifying in order to transform?" Izuku asked, as the woman looked confused. "What are you talking about?" she called out, launching an attack as Izuku moved out of the way to sit down on a rock below her. "I am about to have a Mary Sue situation right now," Izuku muttered to himself, still dodging her attacks. "Stop dodging me. I want to fight you, not have you dodge every attack of mine," the girl complained as Izuku looked up. "Sorry, just muttering to myself," Izuku said, getting into a fighting stance. He also revealed his own Super Saiyan transformation as the woman looked at him in awe, and she ran up to him immediately. "Wow, you're a Saiyan as well," she called out, stars in her eyes. "You not exactly. More like half Saiyan at best, but if you want, this power is not entirely mine," Izuku said, looking away. "What do you mean?" she asked, as Izuku told her about how he came to Universe 7. "Wow, that must have been one hell of a trauma to get over within the last few months," the woman said, as they were somehow still fighting during their conversation. "I know, right? Like, how could your own allies turn against you on information that happened when you yourself wasn't even present?" Quote. Izuku exclaimed as he landed a punch on the woman's stomach. "Wow, you hit surprisingly hard. What are you made out of?" the woman asked, as Izuku looked at her. "Mostly Katsudon, as well as training that cleaned an earth beach of all trash," Izuku said, as the woman stared at him. "I was being rhetorical," she said, as Izuku smirked at her. "And I gave you a rhetorical answer," he said, smiling. "Oh my god, I traded one idiot for another," she said, as Izuku chuckled. "If it makes you feel better, I was just trying to lighten the mood," Izuku said, trying to lift the woman's spirits. She laughed heartily as Izuku listened to it, and he got distracted by the laughter as it was like an angel in his ears. Shaking his head, he focused back on the fight as he made his decision of where to go after the end of the tournament. He was already going to head over to the planet of the Universe 6 Saiyans anyway, so this just made his decision even more clear. "If you want to train back on your planet when this is over, you mind taking me up as a sparring partner?" Izuku asked as the girl smiled at him. "I like you. You are funny, adorable, and a really strong person to fight. So I will take your suggestion up, my friend. My name is Caulifla, and my sister Kale is part of my barging. You take me, you have to deal with Kale as well," the now named Caulifla said, as she revealed a girl who was hiding in plain sight. That's Kale, and your name is Caulifla. Is the entire Saiyan race named after earthling vegetables?" Izuku thought aloud. "What are you talking about?" Kale asked, timidly. "Well, you're the human equivalent of the food we eat for Kale, a vegetable. Goku's Saiyan name is Kakarot, Saiyan name for carrot. Caulifla is the Saiyan name for our planet's vegetable of cauliflower. And Vegeta, well, he is the prince of the vegetables," Izuku said, chuckling as the other Saiyans laughed. "What am I then in terms of your Saiyan vegetable puns?" a young man asked, as Izuku jumped away from him and got into a fighting stance. "Can't believe I got myself so distracted that I didn't sense your arrival. But what is your name, sir?" Izuku asked, as the young man nodded. "My name is Kaba, and I am the general of the military of the Saiyans of planet Sadala," the young Saiyan said. "Wow, you all really are based off of vegetables. You'd be the Earth equivalent of cabbage," Izuku said, as the young man looked at him cautiously. "Since I am cabbage, what are you then?" he asked, as Izuku gave them his name. In the country of Earth, the one I came from unfortunately. My name is Midoriya Izuku. In Japanese customs, my last name comes first before anything else. My given name is to be used for close friends and allies. Izuku said, as Kaba and the girls nodded. I'll call you Izuku because it's easier to remember. Midoriya, seems like your country made sure that you kept up with the theme of green. Kaba said, as Izuku pouted. I didn't ask to be born with green highlighted hair. Izuku said, pouting. The group of Saiyans moved about the arena together as they made a small alliance with the four of themselves. So Mr. Midoriya, how strong are you compared to Master Vegeta? Kaba asked. He is leagues above me in terms of power, but I have Super Saiyan God as well as another form under my belt. Izuku said, smiling as Caulifla glared at Izuku. Why didn't you use those forms against me then? Quote. She called out angrily. I don't want to use my power unnecessarily. If I use too much power early on in the tournament, I could be taken advantage of when I am weaker. I'm conserving my power for the late part of the tournament. Izuku said, looking out from their cover. What's going on at the moment? Kaba asked, as Izuku looked on in horror. Goku is fighting. That gray guy from Universe 11. Izuku said, as everyone looked out and found the leader of the Pride Troopers fighting it out in the arena. Wow, he must be powerful to shrug off any blow that Goku can throw like that as if it was nothing. Caulifla said, as Izuku noticed the small barrier between the man and Goku's strikes. That isn't him shrugging them off of himself, he's simply placed a weak barrier around himself that is much more powerful than that of Goku's current power that he's displaying. Izuku said, as Caulifla and the other two Saiyans looked in awe. It wasn't much longer before Goku and the gray guy had started to take their fight all over the arena as they displayed their true power against one another. When Goku and his opponent went into one another's blows, they created massive shockwaves that caused most of the weaker fighters out of the arena just from the amount of wind produced. It wasn't much longer before Goku placed his hands in the air, and Izuku looked at it in concern as well as confusion. Why does Goku have his hands in the air? I wonder what he's doing. Izuku made the astute observation. Everyone near him was giving Izuku a look as they watched as Goku's powerful massive bomb of an energy attack started to grow. Izuku, I need you to place your hands in the air and give me some energy. Goku's voice called out, as Izuku looked at everyone else's position and noticed how they weren't getting Goku's voice in their head. Izuku then did something that weirded himself out as well as confused some other members of the people he was venturing the arena with. He placed his hand in the air and gave some energy he could spare and regain later. Hey, if you want Goku to defeat that gray guy you should give him some energy, just place a hand in the air. Izuku said, as Kaba noticed immediately and placed both hands in the air. Caulifla and Kale did the same, but with one hand each as they were pretty skeptical as Goku's massive energy attack gained some more power as the man was seemingly surprised by the amount he collected. Then the most amazing thing happened after Goku collected the amount of energy he had. He didn't absorb it into his body, no. He threw the literal bomb of energy at his opponent as if it would send them out of the arena, and his opponent did the one thing seemingly nobody before ever could. He held back the attack. Everyone was watching in awe as Goku and the gray guy had been battling for supremacy over where the attack would go, and it eventually became a black hole as the power had nowhere to go and it was receiving pressure from both sides of the battlefield. And Goku ran out of power in that moment as he fell into the black hole remnants of the bomb attack he threw, creating a massive white explosion. It has been at least 25 minutes since the Tournament of Power had started, and in the ensuing chaos of the tournament, about 4 universes had been destroyed. Universe 9 was the first to go since their entire universe of fighters had teamed up to take out Goku and Vegeta at the start, therefore causing their abrupt end. Then after that it was Universe 4, because they had been losing their more silent fighters as the group of Universe 7 had been taking them out alone. Izuku was the one who finally done in the last member of Universe 4 with the kicking out of a particular opponent who could become stronger the longer he stayed within the arena. Universe 6 sadly was next after a major portion of Universe 11 was defeated, leaving only Jiren, Toppo and Dispo all alone on their team, but Universe 6 a hit, their assassin had been defeated by Jiren of Universe 11. Izuku finally learned the name of the gray alien since the alien Dispo had told him as such during their duel during Goku's fight against Kefla. And now Izuku was all alone in the tournament against some members of Universe 10. These guys were all macho about getting stronger, and Izuku loved fighting stronger guys. But these guys were mere tragedies in this tournament, like seriously how did they last as long as they did? Question mark. They were mere sumo wrestlers at best. But after the defeat by Izuku, Universe 10 had been erased due to losing all their members, thereby causing the entire universe's destruction by Xeno. The universes that were left as of right now, was Universe 3's remnants, remnants of Universe 2, 7, and finally 11. Izuku was currently fighting against Toppo as the man had found him all alone when he was resting from his earlier fight against Universe 10. He found the young man resting on a rock and thought that taking him out now would be a great idea and was now regretting his decision since Izuku still had enough power to hold the fighter back. The rest of Universe 7 was split up from one another, with androids 17 and 18 teaming up on the remnants of Universe 2, with Goku, Vegeta and Gohan taking on Universe 3 at the moment. Just another day in the office of Universe 7. Izuku mumbled to himself before getting punched in the face. I'm getting curious about the boy. How long has he been fighting with his quirk at the moment? Beerus asked Whis. From the beginning of the tournament I believe. There was the few moments he fought Universe 6 with transformations alone. But if anything, he was teaching them about the Super Saiyan transformations if anything. Whis answered as Beerus looked at Izuku fighting Toppo. Why is he holding back then? Beerus asked, as Whis thought about it. It seems like he is trying to keep his power in check so that he doesn't use too much of it. If he does, he will be wide open for an attack to come his way. He will rather not let his guard down it seems. Whis appraised. Well, I would be better off losing a fighter of his caliber with his opponent than lose him when he is holding back. Midoriya, power up already and defeat that bozo. Beerus screamed out, as Izuku looked in his direction. Did you hear something Toppo? Izuku asked, as the man looked confused. What do you mean? Toppo asked, as Izuku looked in another direction. I think Jiren called for your assistance. Izuku said, as Toppo gained a fearful look on his face and jumped away. Taking his moment to escape from the area so that Toppo won't follow close behind, Izuku found a spot to recover from his fight. He was holding back against me. I won't be able to make the same move again in order to get some breathing room. I wonder how Universe 3 are handling. Izuku muttered to himself before he heard the Grand Priest. Universe 2 has all their fighters been eliminated. Therefore, they will be erased from existence. The man called as Izuku growled softly. Damn it, another one destroyed. I can't believe this. Izuku growled. Worry not about them, we can just return them back when we win the tournament. Yoichi said, into Izuku's ear. Alright, let's go assist Goku and the others against Universe 3. Izuku said, before the Grand Priest called out one more time. Android 18 has been eliminated from the Tournament of Power. Damn, it means that something bad happened right. Izuku muttered before arriving to a massive spectacle. He found Goku, Frieza, Vegeta, Gohan, and 17 charging their power in order to take on the massive enemy that stood over them all. Transforming into his more powerful Super Saiyan God form, he moved next to the others and started to charge his Emerald Kamehameha. As soon as everyone launched their attacks, their enemy who Vegeta had informed the boy was aptly named Analyza, said enemy had launched a massive beam of energy himself. Both beams clashed with one another as Izuku further increased the power output by using his quirk along with the power of Ki. The beam's power was instant. It increased in size dramatically as it completely overwhelmed Analyza and sent it into the abyss of the void. It was then that the fusion of the entirety of Universe 3 had been undone in the void as they landed in the stands, all of them eliminated from the tournament. Universe 3 has been eliminated from the Tournament of Power. Therefore, they shall be erased. The Grand Priest called out. As soon as the Omni Kings had destroyed yet another universe, Izuku's heroic mind just couldn't handle it as he moved away from the group and smashed a Kachin wall to smithereens. Are you alright, Izuku? Gohan asked, as he moved closer to the boy. No, That bastard keeps destroying universes as if this was a mere game. In my world, doing that without a thought was frowned upon. Hell, it was downright villainous. Izuku said, angrily about to punch the wall again. Hey, don't let it get to you. You just need to make sure that you can revive all those who were lost in this tournament. All right, Gohan asked, as Izuku nodded. As they were leaving the area, 3 people showed up and looked down at them from their position of high ground. Splitting up from one another, Izuku went with Toppo alone, as Frieza and Gohan went for Dispo. 17 had gone over with Izuku in order to take on Toppo. Goku and Vegeta had gone after Jiren by themselves, and Izuku wasn't envious at all at how they were going after the heaviest hitter of Universe 11. As Izuku pulled Toppo over to a big clearing, he and Toppo clashed in the middle of said clearing as they pulled out all the stops in order to take them down. Izuku had transformed into his god form in order to match the power of Toppo as the man powered up as much as possible to not be left behind. Izuku and Toppo clashed their fists, kicks, as well as ki blasts as they used every technique they had learned over the many years of their lives in order to defeat the other. Izuku kicked Toppo away from himself as he charged a massive attack that thought up on the spot. He pointed one hand into the sky as he gathered all the power he could in his god form as he combined it with his quirk one for all. Toppo could do nothing but watch as the giant ball of energy continued to gather more power. It was until Izuku stopped charging the power that he started to condense it all into his palm as he pointed it at Toppo. It was here that Android 17 had made his presence known as he released a surprise attack on Toppo's back as the blast had smashed into the man's back, causing him to be pushed over to where Izuku was located as he walked slowly to the man, and as soon as he placed his palm on the man's chest, Toppo looked panicked at what was about to happen. Explosive stream. Izuku muttered as a small beam of energy had sent Toppo rag-dolling across the entire arena all the way to the edge of the arena. Toppo was then seen as he was about to stand back up. His entire upper torso was taken from his clothes, as his rotund belly was shown. I give up my ideals of being a hero, I will become a god of destruction. The man said, before a massive hurricane of force had appeared around him. Izuku watched on as the man had become a new god of destruction candidate, and as soon as the man was powering up from his base to his now full power, Izuku seen that the man was glowing a purple color, and he was now glaring at both him and Android 17 as he spoke. I am now the god of destruction, and nothing can defeat me now. The man said, as he rushed Izuku and 17. Izuku dodged the first strike of Toppo as he blasted past him with tremendous speed that Izuku used danger sense in order to dodge. Jumping down near 17, the man looked at Izuku as he asked his own question. What happened to him? He wasn't this strong before. He cast out his ideals as well as dreams to become the next god of destruction. With it, he won't be able to hold back much more. Izuku said, as 17 nodded as they made a new plan. Since we got him to this point of his mentality, do you think we can get him to think that it won't be enough to defeat us? 17 asked. I don't know, I have another form after the god form of mine, but I am not sure if it will be enough. Izuku said, as 17 looked at him incredulously. You took him on with just a quirk as well as god ki, and you are still holding back? He asked. Yeah, I had been waiting to use it for when I mastered the form as well as combined its power with my quirk. Izuku said, as 17 just shook his head. Well, there's no time as any to try and do both. 17 said, as they both dodged another attack from Toppo in his destruction mode. It was here that they and Toppo had heard the sounds of another explosion in the distance. Looking over and looking at the red-colored explosion, Izuku heard the Grand Priest had begun to speak. Son Gohan of Universe 7 has been eliminated, and the same is said about Dispo of Universe 11. All that remains of both Universes 7 and 11 are Midoriya Izuku, Android 17, Son Goku, Vegeta, Frieza, Jiren and Toppo. The Grand Priest said, as all the gods of destruction as well as creation and angels had paid even more attention to the battle. There is now only about 15 minutes left in the Tournament of Power, and the two universes of 7 and 11 are now fighting to see if they can survive the battle. As Goku and Vegeta were fighting Jiren on their own, Izuku Frieza, and Android 17 after hearing that Gohan had been eliminated by Frieza to take out Dispo were now fighting Toppo in his God form. His body had the power to destroy each of their attacks whenever it had hit him on his body as it was erased from existence. Android 17 had told Izuku that now would probably be the time in order to show the new form he had under his sleeve since they were in the final stretch of the Tournament of Power. Nodding his head, Izuku jumped away as Frieza and 17 had taken Toppo's attention of the young man as he started to charge his power. As that was happening, Frieza was getting his stomach replaced by Toppo as 17 made sure to dodge the man's attacks before they all noticed an emerald sheen covering the rock where Izuku was located. They tried to see through the sheen, but it was too bright for them to be capable of seeing through. As soon as it started to wane though, they saw an emerald figure moving with the sheen covering his body as a small aura was beginning to shine through. It broke away as they saw the new form Izuku was now encased with. His hair was much taller and spikier than how it originally looked. His muscles were much slimmer as well as more compact than originally seen, and his eyes were now a lime green as a weird glow came from his eyes. His hair though was more of a teal greenish blue color, and his power was continuously rising as he walked away from his position on the rock and towards Toppo. The man had sensed the power of this young man firsthand and noticed that it was incredibly dangerous to take his eyes off of him. So as he charged a ball of Hawkeye energy, he kept his eyes on Izuku as the young man stood on top of his rock formation and with a smirk, he pulled the sheen away from him revealing his slimmer as well as powerful form. He traded a lot of muscles in order to pull this transformation off, but with how compact his muscles were in this form, he was able to dish out even more damage to those who were hit by him. He then jumped from his rock and landed in front of Toppo who had released the Hawkeye energy onto the young man as he seemingly phased through it. Confused he started to send a volley of Hawkeye energy towards the now approaching Izuku as the boy was seemingly walking through the barrage. Completely confused, he then noticed that Izuku's hand was glowing ominously as he prepared to destroy the oncoming attack. As soon as Izuku stood in front of the man he smirked at him as he placed his hand on the man's face as the blast started to consume the area as Izuku stated the name of his attack. Emerald's Bomb. The look on Izuku's face was extremely calm as he said this as well. As Goku and Vegeta were in the middle of their fight with Jiren they found a massive emerald explosion in the distance. Jiren had increased his power a little in order to fight them both at the same time as well as fought slightly harder since Dispo was defeated. They were gaining ground on the rival universe when they saw someone flying towards them damaged and bruised. As soon as the man landed on the ground, Goku noticed that it was Toppo who had landed on the ground near them. What happened to Toppo? Goku asked, concerned. Toppo though got back up from the ground revealing himself in his God of Destruction form, as Jiren sighed as he looked away from the man. It appears that he gave up on his ideals and became who he really wanted to become. Vegeta said, as Jiren and Toppo had looked at one another before nodding. Toppo had went after Vegeta as they both were separated from one another as Izuku landed nearby to assist Goku with Jiren. And as Vegeta looked at Izuku's new form, he couldn't be any prouder as the boy had managed to find a form that fit himself instead of the transformations that the Saiyans already had. Looking back at his opponent he found Toppo looking at him seriously as Vegeta powered up in his own new form. It was his own version of his evolutionized blue form as he called it Blue Evolution, since it was the perfect name for it at the moment. Well, it seems like you cast aside your pride in order to gain power. That is not the way of a warrior. Vegeta said, before getting into a combat stance. You have no idea what this power means to me. If I must cast aside my ideals, my pride, then so be it. I must keep Universe 11 safe from any harm. By any means necessary, Toppo said, as he attacked Vegeta. With Goku and Izuku the two were surprisingly great people to team up against one opponent as their fighting styles had meshed really well. Since Goku really liked to throw his power around, Izuku's analytical prowess had made the fight really tricky for Jiren that he had to focus on the young man entirely since he would become a threat if he was to stay longer. But there was just one issue. His new form or whatever it was had made him more easily capable of escaping any kind of attack that Jiren had thrown at him. The madman had launched hundreds of powerful strikes at him with his eyes as the young man had dodged each and every one of them with a happy smile on his face. Receiving a kick to the face, Jiren had slid back a little as Goku had appeared and kicked him in the stomach, forcing him to fly backwards in the air. Izuku had appeared behind him through and cut up the arena floor that when Jiren landed it started to fall into the world of void below. As their teamwork started to ramp up even more, they all heard an explosion on the other side of the arena and saw a massive yellow explosion taking place. Vegeta's going full power on Toppo. Seems like he could defeat a god of destruction's candidate. Goku said, smirking at Jiren. If he was capable of defeating Toppo, then he was weak. Nothing more, nothing less. Jiren said, coldly as Izuku landed behind the remaining Universe 11 member. You won't be winning this tournament, Jiren, give up. We won't be making sure that everyone remains erased for long. Izuku said, as Goku looked at him confused. What do you mean by that, young man? Jiren asked, as he looked at Izuku. What do I mean by that? Well, that's obvious. When we win the Tournament of Power, we will revive all those who were destroyed by the Omni Kings. Izuku said, as Jiren looked into Izuku's eyes. There has to be some kind of alternative motive behind that action. What are your true feelings about that? Jiren demanded as he attacked the boy. As Izuku dodged each strike with terrifying speed, as well as barely missing each dodge correctly, Izuku spoke up. I never really liked how the Omni Kings were wishing to destroy everything. What kind of hero would I be if I allowed him to completely destroy every single universe without putting up a fight? Izuku asked, as Jiren began to get a little angrier. There is no way that someone is that selfless. You need some kind of motivation in order to protect others. There is no way you can do so without it. Jiren called out, as Izuku jumped out of the way and landed on a rock formation as Jiren appeared before him. What motivation could I have other than the smiles of others? That's all I want from others, to smile when they see my presence. To be a hero is to not want anything in return after you save someone's life. You are to be there for someone even if they don't want your presence. To be a true hero, one must be willing to sacrifice everything they live for in order to become a hero. And I have a long way to go before I can truly call myself a true hero. Izuku said, as he dodged a strike from the remaining Universe 11 participant. Toppo of Universe 11 has been eliminated. There remains one participant from Universe 11 until the Tournament of Power. Not only that, but only 6 minutes remain from the Tournament of Power. The Grand Priest called out as Izuku was forced to dodge. As they fought in the middle of the arena, Izuku had made sure to place all his power into his movement so that he could keep going in his fight. Vegeta and Goku rejoined the effort to defeat Jiren when they fought harder than ever before. Jiren, because of Vegeta's interference again, had powered up even more to handle fighting 3 people, and soon enough Goku and Vegeta had lost most of their reserves of power as they were just in base form. As Goku had been knocked out in the arena, Vegeta and Izuku were all that were seemingly left before Jiren's eyes. And as Vegeta, with as little power as he could attack Jiren, Izuku joined in the attacks as they both made Jiren think faster. But eventually Vegeta was eliminated from the Tournament of Power since he just couldn't keep fighting anymore as he ran through all his reserves and gave his last amount of power to Goku. As Izuku was punted away from Jiren, the man went after Goku as he got back up from the ground, and as time seemed to slow down, the Saiyan had managed to fight Jiren for a time before he too ran out of strength to continue to fight. During this time frame though, Izuku had long ran out of power to keep up his new form. It was too taxing on him since it took way too much power to hold. He was currently holding his quirk's power at 100% power just to stay in the fight. With all the added quirks that came with his base quirk of One for All, he had managed to stay in the arena. And just as Goku was about to be defeated, he showed a power he hadn't shown ever since Kefla had shown up in the arena. Ultra Instinct. Although it seemed to be the less powerful version of it, and as Goku took his fight to Jiren, it would only be a matter of time before he lost it again. So Izuku, using his full power as a human, had launched into the fight as well in order to provide as much support to Goku as possible. But with Jiren's power as well as speed, it was a losing battle for Izuku. As soon as he was able to land a punch on Jiren's back, he used Gear Shift in order to increase both his power as well as speed of which the attack landed. Jiren was sent flying across the arena because of this ability that Izuku showed to everyone who looked on in shock as well as intrigue. What kind of power was that? I thought he was part Saiyan like Goku's son over here. Universe 11's God of Destruction asked. That was the power he was born with from what we know. He had those abilities because of the fact that they were facets of his original strength, and he could use the other abilities he has in this fight, but only one of them would really be useless. Vegeta spoke up as the God of Destruction had looked over. And what ability is that? He asked, as Vegeta smirked. The ability to fly. And as they looked back at the battle, Jiren and Goku were in the air, as Izuku blasted Jiren with air pressure strikes that he flicked at the man from below. Using air pressure strikes, that is rubbish against Jiren's strength as well as defenses. The god said, as Vegeta looked at him. Izuku had been fighting as hard as he could in order to stay in the arena. He hadn't shown his other abilities since it would mean that they would know about all of his powers. But now wasn't the time to show his true powers within the world. As the battle rages on, Goku had managed to finally gain full control over the power of Ultra Instinct, as he now had a silver-ish white hair style in the base form he always looked like. His eyes were remaining the silver that they were before he mastered the power as he walked over to the now shell-shocked Jiren. Their battle continued as the Grand Priest had announced that there was now about 3 minutes left before the tournament was over, and Jiren had unlocked the rest of his power that he kept hidden. Izuku kept himself hidden as he regained as much power as possible to stay in the tournament of power. As he watched the fight between the two titans of this battle arena, he couldn't help but smile as Goku had the man on the run since he managed to transform into his full-powered UI state. But like good things must happen, bad things have to happen as well. Goku had defeated Jiren to the point that he couldn't release his full power anymore and was taking too long to take him out of the tournament. Izuku got up from the ground and made his way over to where the two combatants were located as Goku prepared his final strike against Jiren. But just as Goku was about to release his strike against the man, his entire body retaliated against him as the powers of a god started to fight back against him since he didn't have true control over his godly powers. Jiren had noticed how Goku's body started to fail him with the God Ki, and he immediately looked horrified. But that was when the god of destruction of his universe spoke up. "Do it, Jiren. Don't let Goku win this thing," he cried out, as Jiren stood back up although a little dizzy. As Goku stayed on the ground as he tried to recover from his injuries of the godly display, Jiren spoke to him as he pointed a hand at Goku. "You were a worthy opponent. I will make sure to remember you when your universe is erased," Jiren said. Apparently, he had forgotten about a couple other fighters in the arena. As soon as he destroyed the area around Goku, the man fell down into the abyss of the void, seemingly eliminated from the tournament. But then a blast of air had sent Goku onto another platform nearby as Jiren looked over to see who had saved Goku. And it was revealed to be Frieza as the man had smiled over at him. "Can't let you do that, Jiren," Frieza laughed. Android 17 revealed himself to still be alive after the explosion he did to keep Jiren's attack at bay from Goku and Vegeta's injured forms earlier in the tournament. Powering up, both of them were not prepared to watch as Jiren went to attack them before being grabbed up in black whips. Looking up above them, they found Izuku seemingly floating in the air as they saw that his black appendages were sticking him to another platform nearby. "This battle has gone on long enough, Jiren. Universe 7 will win this thing, even if we have to eliminate ourselves to take you out. Now 17 Frieza," Izuku called out, as both fighters had launched themselves at Jiren and grabbed him as Izuku threw all three of them out and into the void. As soon as the trio were sent out of the arena, there was no going back for them as everyone looked on in shock. Izuku pulled himself as well as Goku back into the arena at the top as Izuku panted heavily. "Damn, didn't think that those three weighed so much. I need to increase my weightlifting training again," Izuku mumbled to himself as he helped Goku up from the ground. As soon as everyone moved over to Goku and Izuku, they started to celebrate the win of Universe 7 as they gave hugs as well as fist bumps to the respective winners. The true winner of this tournament of power was Midoriya Izuku. "What wish do you wish to have?" the Grand Priest asked as he moved closer with the Super Dragon Balls. "I want to bring back all the universes that Grand Zeno had destroyed in this tournament as well as those erased before this tournament," Izuku said, as he panted. "Are you sure you want this wish?" the Grand Priest asked, as Izuku nodded. He remembered how Whis had mentioned that Zeno had destroyed another 12 universes before the present events of this universe. As soon as the wish was made, they had managed to take everyone back to their respective universes, as Goku and Vegeta had returned back to their training even after the tournament. Izuku had other plans. Gathering his small belongings, he looked at Whis as the angel smiled down at him as Izuku grabbed the man's back as they disappeared from Universe 7 completely. Next stop, Universe 6. Whis and Izuku appeared on the planet of Universe 6, a version of planet Sadala, and what a sight it was for Izuku to behold. As he looked around the planet, he expected it to be completely covered to the brim with damaged rock faces as well as destroyed cities. But all he found was a luscious forest that looked like it could cover the entire planet if it wanted to, and he was all but happy to stay here. Thanks, Whis, is this a native forest within planet Sadala? Izuku asked as Whis looked down to him. Why yes, it is native to those who live barbarically. I believe that you would be capable of controlling them from the inside out, and I can't wait to hear about the adventures you go on in this universe. It needs all the help it can get when it comes to politics. Whis said, before he went to leave. But before he left, he looked back at Izuku for a moment before something happened in his mind that made him decide to make this decision. I almost forgot to give you what Lord Beerus had asked me to. Whis said, before walking towards Izuku. The boy looked at the angel with trepidation as he didn't know what that Catman wanted with Izuku, but as soon as Whis tapped his staff on Izuku's forehead his whole body had glowed before an audible pop was heard. What was that? Izuku asked, worriedly. Don't worry young man, just made sure that your whole body was made into a Saiyan. The Saiyans are a race who value the whole Saiyan blood inside those they mate with, so I don't mind doing this for you. I hope that you are happy with the results of what happens now. Whis said, before disappearing into a spire of energy and leaving. Well, I guess I am a full Saiyan now. I wonder if that means I can reach the levels of power that Goku reached in the tournament. Izuku muttered to himself as he walked through the forest taking everything in. He was walking around the place as he took in the scene in front of him, animals running all over the place, insects making their sounds as well as the occasional butterfly landing on his nose before flying away. Hell, even a small bird had landed into his hair and made a nest inside of it. Shaking his head softly, he continued on. As Izuku was walking through the forest he was taking stock of everything that lives within it. Based on the animals, he could live here indefinitely if he played his cards right and lived out his remaining years as a Universe 6 Saiyan. He started to kick down some trees in order to start making a home for himself within the forest. He always made sure to find the seeds for these trees in order to replant them. Didn't want to be found just yet, and if he was then that was a future Izuku problem that he could deal with. The craft came from the fourth user of One for All Hikage Shinomori as he informed Izuku how he built his home in the forest where he trained himself for 10 years before being found by All for One. He was in the middle of fixing one of the walls when he was approached by one of the many predators in the forest. It seemed to be a mix of either a tiger or a tyrannosaurus, but that didn't mean anything to Izuku. Food was food after all. As the giant being attacked him, Izuku landed harsh blows to it, causing it to instantly die since it didn't have any defense against his extremely strong blows. As soon as it was dead, he started to skin the beast and placed all the skins on a small meat rack as he started to slice up the good muscle of the beast in order to have a good dinner. As soon as he was finished with the walls of the home, he decided to take a break from his building in order to take stock of his food situation as well as water. He moved into the forest in order to find some water reserves, and soon found a lake. Taking a cautious sip of the water, he found that it was fresh water and smiled to himself as he started to dig a trench in order to bring the water closer to his makeshift home. As soon as he returned back to his home, he found that the place was coming into its own and he couldn't be prouder of himself. Even the vestiges were happy about his progress with his new home, and they gave him ideas about what he could do to increase the security of the place. Night was coming in fast as Izuku finished making the roof of the house as he smiled at the building. It looked beautiful with a giant water wheel that collected water and distributed it in order to create electricity. He pulled the dead animal into his home as he looked at the pure brick fireplace that Izuku made out of the mud that he superheated to create the craft as he placed the animal in a separate room in order to slice up some more in order to rapidly cook it and place it in a secure place for him to eat it later. Once he was in the process of making his dinner, he heard a knock at his door and was surprised to hear some grunting outside of it. He had made medical supplies with all the forestry anyway and thought that it was someone who needed help. What he did not expect was to see Kaba standing there with a dumbfounded look on his face as he stared at Izuku with a slight fear as well as recognition. "Midoriya, what are you doing here on planet Sadala?" Kaba asked, morbidly confused. "Making this forest my new home, if you must know. But yeah, moved here just earlier today from Universe 7, Whis gave me a ride here and managed to get me started," Izuku said, as Kaba nodded. "Now I know why I sensed your unique power as well as its slight shift. Can you inform me as to why you are living in the forest instead of the city? I could have made an accommodation from the king for you," Kaba asked, as Izuku allowed him inside his home. "I don't like handouts, but thanks for the offer. I just wanted to live in this universe until I reached the end of my days, probably find love, have some kids and just stop fighting altogether. But don't think that if I'm stopping myself from fighting others, that I will stop training. I'm never stopping that. I need to keep myself at full power, if not continue to get stronger in order to protect myself and my new home. Just give me a call if there is a threat you need me to take care of," Izuku said, as he patted the young man's shoulder. "Okay, well, do you need a job at the moment? You could join the Sadala Defense Force. We are in need of strong people in order to defend the planet," Kaba asked, as he sat down next to Izuku as the boy tended to the food. "I'm fine with what I've got. I've made a makeshift electric modifier outside if you see it," Izuku said, as Kaba nodded. "It's so primal that I never thought that someone would make it here. But I can see why you wanted to live in a forest away from all civilization. Not a fan of people, I guess?" Kaba asked, as Izuku nodded. "Not that I don't trust you guys and the other Saiyans, but I just had bad luck trusting others in the past, and I will not be easy to give trust willingly," Izuku said, as Kaba grunted in agreement. "Well, thank you for coming here. There is only one threat to us at the moment, and that is Frost, if you can believe it. He was evil all this time, and we are making sure that we can catch and detain him before sending him to the galactic prison where he belongs," Kaba said, as Izuku nodded. "Where is the other two Saiyans who were on your team in the Tournament of Power?" Izuku asked, as Kaba sighed. "They are back where they live right now, in the slums of the city. They pillage food as well as supplies from the main city that we are using in order to feed the populace there. And no matter how many times I attempt to stop them, it's 2-on-1. But they helped try and save the universe, so I might just be holding back on my power on them," Kaba said, as Izuku nodded, pulling out the meat and tossing a piece to Kaba. "Well, if you are to confront them again soon, you might as well as get something to eat. I know that my assistance might not help you all too much, but be observant for their fighting style. Find anything that they do in a fight that seems choreographed too many times and you might be capable of countering them," Izuku said, as Kaba nodded. "I see. Are you a genius when it comes to fighting, Midoriya?" Kaba asked, as Izuku shook his head. "Just been fighting for a long time, and I can be very observant when it comes to others. I could be standing in the same room as you and you won't notice me until I'm leaving the room without you noticing at the last second," Izuku said, before using the same very technique to leave in a wisp of smoke. As Kaba ate his food and left Izuku in the forest, he didn't know that he unknowingly led Caulifla and Kale over to the home of Izuku. So who did he talk to in there? Do you think he was hiring someone new to fight us for the supplies we need to keep our gang alive?" Caulifla asked Kale, who shrugged. "I don't know, sister, but we should probably see who it is in the morning. Can't keep an eye on him for too long. Although there is something familiar about his energy," Kale said, as Caulifla nodded. "We'll come back tomorrow to see who this mysterious attacker will be. And once we see and defeat him, we will send his body to Kaba to show that we mean business," Caulifla said, as she smirked at the cottage. Meanwhile, inside said cottage, Izuku looked at them through the window of his bedroom as he seemingly looked at them with a deadpan expression. They are aware that I could see them, right? Izuku asked as the vestiges appeared behind him. Didn't know that some women could be so idiotic that it was a sport. Daigoro said, as he chuckled as Nana spoke up. Isn't the more active one you have a massive crush on Izuku? Nana asked, as Izuku gained a blush. Please don't put an image of her in my head, I don't want to have dreams about her tonight. Izuku said, going to sleep that night. Alright men, you understand the plan, right? Caulifla asked, as her men nodded as they approached the small clearing where Izuku's house was located in the huge forest. They landed outside the building as they looked around the place for the supposed fighter to defeat them and prevent them from stealing from the king. But for some reason, the man who they were looking for was nowhere to be seen. As Caulifla looked around the place with Kale, they soon found the person who they had been looking for sitting in one of the hot springs within the forest. Wow, didn't know that there was a hot spring in this dense jungle. Got to come here sometime, she said aloud as she entered the place. If you're here to fight me, then I would advise against it. A familiar voice called out to them. Who are you, and why is your voice familiar? Caulifla and Kale shouted as they stood back to back. Caulifla looked through the small steamed-out place as she found a mirage of a tall figure looking at them both from behind a rock in the water. Shooting a ki blast towards the rock, he heard it break as she heard a small yelp from behind it before looking in that direction. Only to find Izuku standing in a towel just a few meters away as it was getting wet. What are you doing here, Midoriya? Caulifla called out, blushing. Exactly what I am doing. Taking a relaxing bath in the hot springs. What do you take me for, a barbarian? Izuku yelled back as he covered his quickly rising tent in his towel. Placing his whole body except for his head underneath the water, Caulifla walked over to Izuku as she sat at the edge of the water. What are you doing in Universe 6? I thought you were in Universe 7. Caulifla asked, as she heard Kale sit down behind her looking away from Izuku. I came here because from what I've known, your universe is much calmer when it comes to new threats. I just want to live the rest of my days on planet Sadala and have a family before I eventually die. Izuku said, looking away from the woman. Well, what are you doing in this forest when you could live in the city? She asked as Izuku looked at her. I don't have a very good past with socializing with others. They have done bad things to me in the past. Not those on this planet, but people who I've known in the past. And don't think that Universe 7 kicked me out of their universe. I moved her on my own choice as well as volition. Izuku said, as Caulifla nodded. Did Kaba ask you to assist him in taking me and my crew down yesterday? She asked, as Izuku nodded. Yeah, but at the same time, he asked if I would like to join his army since my power could be a great boon for their mortal enemy Frost. Izuku said, as Caulifla nodded. But what did you choose? I know you didn't choose to go with them. Caulifla said, as Izuku nodded. I didn't choose to join him in his cause, just gave him a reason to call me out when there is a threat that requires my strength. Izuku said, as Caulifla nodded once again. Well, do you mind if I join you? I'm pretty sure that Kale would like that as well. Caulifla asked, whilst getting ready to take off her top. Sure, just don't look over in my direction. I've never bathed with those of the opposite sex. Izuku said, as Caulifla happily tossed off her clothes and had Kale do the same before jumping in. The rest of her crew came upon the place as they asked who Izuku was, and Izuku had informed all of them that he caused their universe to return back to normal. They expressed their gratitude for saving their universe, and Izuku nodded as the group decided to leave the place so that their leader could get some alone time. You know, you're not a bad guy. I've never seen someone who was a Saiyan look so kindly towards others, much less not look cynical. Caulifla said, as she relaxed next to Izuku. I thought I told you to place yourself away from me. Izuku asked as he moved slightly away from her. But as he moved away from her, another body placed itself on his right side as he looked over to find Kale sitting there with a blush on her face as well. I can't believe that you both are trying to seduce me right now. Izuku said, as he tried to move away from the two girls. But he then felt them pull him back towards them with surprising strength as he was firmly placed between them both as they smirked at him. We can't let you do that, Izuku, Caulifla said, as she blew some wind into his ear causing a massive blush to his face. I know that you want to leave, but please let us stay here longer, Kale said, as she leaned more into his arm. Feeling their chests on both of his arms, he just sighed as he just lowered himself a bit in order to cover the rising arousal that was slowly coming on. But as soon as he was feeling aroused, he then felt something enter his towel, and it was reaching near his slowly rising shaft with a tense movement that was really slow. Izuku looked over at both girls and found both of their arms moving closer to him as he kept his breathing steady. This better not become something that I will regret later, Izuku thought in his mind as their hands soon reached his shaft. Chapter 13. Frosty. Summary. Frost comes to planet Sadala to attack the planet. He doesn't get very far. Izuku had some moments with the female Saiyans he'd met in the TOP. Izuku kept himself calm in the mind as well as body as he watched as both girls messed with his rising problem that was underneath his towel. Wow, you're really big underneath that towel, Caulifla said, as she smirked at him. Izuku kept his gaze away from the girl as he stared at the sky waiting for them to leave him alone. He wasn't prepared for something akin to this to happen when the two girls had entered the hot spring with him. He then felt them start to rub their hands up and down his shaft as he felt his arousal start to increase as he kept his thoughts about them inside his mind. Their menstruation started to increase as his breathing increased from them moving up and down his shaft. As soon as he felt his climax coming, he felt that now was the time to try and escape the two girls as he stood up abruptly as he walked over towards the trees to relieve himself of their menstruations. But as soon as he started to try and release his body's tensed form from their advances, he felt two pairs of hands grabbing onto his arms and pulling him back to the hot spring that he had found. You aren't getting rid of us that easily, you see. We are a bit hung up like you are. And you are kind of cute. How about it, Kale? Want to make this guy take RV cards? Caulifla asked, as Kale looked at Izuku's more than shocked expression before nodding. It would be like having a relationship with someone else that isn't you, sister. Kale said, as all hope for Izuku in his mind was lost. As he was pulled back into the waters, he felt them continue to do their admittedly soft and fast strokes of his shaft in order to bring him back up to climax once more. Within the hour of them all being in the springs, it had devolved from being them giving him some pleasure, to him pleasuring them both at the same time. He felt his own arousal taking control over his motor functions as he could only hope that he doesn't get them pregnant in his seemingly drunken stupor. Izuku and the girls had entered his home as all three went all the way to his bedroom to finish what they had started in the springs. Pushing Izuku onto his bed, he watched as the two girls were straddling each side of his body as they rubbed their clits on his legs. Izuku felt his arousal hit its peak as his body tried to force himself to stand up and pleasure them more than when he did at the hot springs. As soon as he made the attempt to stand up again, both girls softly pushed him back down as they both smiled at him. This is pleasure for everyone, we are about to hit the main course anyway, Caulifla said, huskily breathing on his neck. Just let us do all the work, you did enough at the hot spring. Kale said, on the other side in the same manner. As soon as Izuku thought about what they were planning on doing, he felt something really hot as well as tight grabbing hold of his shaft. Releasing a big breath, Izuku looked down only to find that Caulifla had impaled her body with his shaft as she had a big smile looking at him. This is the biggest cock that I've ever felt inside of me, Caulifla called out beeping as Kale moved her rear over Izuku's face. You can make me feel good, until Caulifla is done with your cock, Kale said, as Izuku dumbly nodded as Kale lowered herself over his face. As soon as Izuku let out a breath into her clit, she beeped out softly as Izuku pushed his tongue deep into her folds as she started to rub herself over his face as well. Caulifla on the other hand was having the time of her life on Izuku's rod as she bounced as well as rubbed herself over it. It was spectacular in her opinion as she moved in different directions as well as made herself give a reverse mating press onto Izuku before she felt something welling up inside of her. But that was when everything went wrong for her, as Izuku lifted himself up from the bend and placed Kale down next to her as he placed Caulifla into a mating press himself as he pounded deep into her. Damn, and here I thought I got myself a very submissive man, Caulifla said, grunting as well as beeping. Izuku placed his fingers in Kale's clit and pushed further in order to increase the girl's pleasure as Izuku pounded deep into Caulifla. He soon felt his climax coming as Izuku stopped pleasuring Kale in order to focus on himself at the moment before looking into Caulifla's eyes. "Where do you want it?" Izuku asked, as he sounded like an animal. Caulifla could feel that Izuku's cock was getting more and more hot as she finally let out a beep of pleasure. "I don't care where you put it," she called out, as Izuku nodded and increased in speed. Soon enough both partners had climaxed as Caulifla felt a hot seed entering her womb. She even could feel like it was expanding it a small bit from the amount. Izuku pulled out of her as he moved over to Kale, and he could already find her fingering herself as she watched as his cum-stained shaft moved around as he crawled over to her. "Where would you want it?" Izuku huskily asked, losing the mental battle of control into the woman's ear. "I inside, like big sister," she said, as Izuku obliged. Pushing into her even tighter hole, Izuku was in complete bliss as he started to move in and out as he watched the girl's expression increase from pain and suffering to pleasure as well as slight lust. For some reason in Izuku's mind, it was informing him about a moon coming up for the planet and he kept himself focused on his task. He kept going in her as he felt her womb start to be beeped by the tip of his shaft as he felt himself get even closer to climax again. Looking at the girl, his eyes expressed his want as she nodded towards him as he increased his speed, changed their positions as he had her facing the bed and her head in a pillow. Holding her beep against his beep, Izuku kept pumping his hips into her beep as he felt his climax appear and he held her beep close to him as he released everything into her. Kale's body twitched as well as trembled as she felt his hot seed enter her as well as she slowly but surely smiled with drool coming out of her mouth. Once they were complete, Izuku moved backwards from the girl's body as he let out a few ragged breaths. It was here that his logical mind could return in full force as he saw that his bed, inhabited by the two girls, with his cum flowing out of their cores, and he felt his arousal slowly coming back before he pulled out a key blast and blasted himself into unconsciousness. Izuku woke up a few hours later, as he saw that the girls weren't present in his home anymore. He felt their energies, and they were on the other side of the planet as he shook his head at the thought of the dream he seemingly had. Moving into the kitchen, he was completely unaware of the fact that he was completely nude as he made his breakfast until he felt a draft enter his home. Looking down, he ran into the shower in order to take a cold one, and as soon as he came back out clothed as well as completely aware of everything now. He made sure to keep an eye on his breakfast so that he could start to make another barrier around his place of living. He left his house as soon as he got some breakfast into his belly, and he continued on with creating a fence around his home so that people could know that someone lived here. He would continue working on his yard for the next few hours completely unaware of the attack that was about to happen in a few hours in the main city where Kaba was located. Over in the city, Kaba was with his elite forces as they were preparing for an attack from Frost. The cutthroat pirate of the universe had come back in order to pillage their planet for supplies as well as place them under his rule. Kaba and his elite special forces were preparing for an assault from Frost's forces that were coming down towards the planet. He and his special forces were shooting the ships out of the sky with their blasters as well as their own energy. Kaba did take notice on how one of the ships landed in the forest where Izuku was living in currently, and he couldn't help but chuckle at how they were going to be utterly annihilated from existence by the young man. And sure enough, as soon as they were attacking the main forces of Frost's pirates, they all heard an explosion within the forest that was just south of the Sadala kingdom within planet Sadala. And as everyone, even Frost from his hovercraft, had looked over at the explosion, a figure was making their way over towards their location. And as soon as they were nearby, Kaba noticed how the energy was filled with anger and fury at how they were moving towards them. Preparing for a battle against Frost, he knew that the alien creature was training since the battle of the Tournament of Power, and he had prepared himself as well. Training himself to be almost as strong as Goku Super Saiyan 3 from the Tournament of Power after he regained his power. As soon as he was clashing with Frost in the air, as the alien had attacked him in his final form, someone landed in the battlefield. Frost looked over and saw someone from the Tournament of Power glaring harshly at him with a fury that was not misplaced. "Who are you? From what I remember, you were in Universe 7's team from the tournament," Frost said, as the person glared at him with fury. Kaba, get your forces away from this area. I am going to make sure that Frost doesn't come back here ever again. The man said, as Frost laughed. If you really think that you can defeat me, then you are sorely mistaken. The alien creature said, as he powered up to a new form he didn't have in the tournament. Wow, golden like Frieza was. Did you even make sure that you kept the stamina problem of that power-up in check? Izuku asked, as Frost stared at him in confusion. You know about this form? He asked, confused. Of course, I should be. I was the one who fought Frieza when he came to Earth before the Tournament of Power when he used that form. And even then, he only trained for 4 months in order to attain that power. He forgot to take care of one problem though, Izuku said, pausing in his sentence to disappear from view. As soon as a wind blasted behind Frost, the alien had started to tremble in fear as the familiar man was right behind him as he was looking off into the distance. You will probably not escape the planet, mainly because of the fact that I am pissed. Your men had come to my house, destroyed my said house, before I returned from making my fence for my home, only for me to find them laughing about my destroyed home. They even name-dropped you, stating that you told them to destroy any and all homes within the planet to sell the populace. I do not take kindly to people who enslave other races, even if it's for revenge, Izuku said, as he punched Frost in the face, sending him flying back into a rock face. Izuku then transformed into his emerald form from the Tournament of Power as he flew towards Frost's position. Your time is up for this universe, Frost. I will make sure that you aren't brought back from the dead, Izuku screamed out as he started to fight the pirate leader. Frost started to fly towards Izuku as they clashed in the high atmosphere as they disappeared and reappeared in different locations of the sky, clashing with one another. Kaba on the ground looked at the forces of Frost as they were being defeated quite easily by his special forces. Smiling to himself, he watched as Frost got manhandled by Izuku as he brought out the proverbial popcorn and enjoyed the view. Note to self, make sure to not piss him off, he muttered to himself as he enjoyed the view of Frost getting his beak kicked. To be continued. I hope you enjoyed this story. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.